Han Li barely escaped a blue-clothed cultivator, only to walk straight into Dr. Mo's widows and their fearsome flood dragon association. Between a cold poison in his veins and a wife who won't stop staring at him like he's already dead, he's starting to wonder which threat will kill him first. Hit like and subscribe to walk the immortal road with him. On the way, he had met with other travelers, but when they arrived at the bustling city streets, Han Li had left their company to take a shortcut on a path that ran through the desolate wilderness. He didn't face much danger even halfway through the journey. In fact, the only slightly dangerous incident he had encountered was when he had met several hungry wild wolves during his stay at some remote region in the vast wilderness. Although the wolves were the ones hunting Han Li, they ended up as Han Li's dinner instead. Han Li had traveled through 2 other provinces before finally arriving at Land Province with a body covered in dust. The moment he entered the Land Province, he was amazed by the massive water channels he saw, sprawling from one end to the other and accessible from all directions. After all, he came from a region where there was mostly just mountainous wilderness. There weren't many places to see small lakes, not to mention big lakes and canals. As for drinking water, they would usually obtain it from wells or small creeks. Thus, Han Li was extremely interested in the boats and crafts that were sailing on the water canals. In the end, because of his curiosity and obsession, he had spent some money and rented a small boat, savoring the taste of his virgin sailing experience. After 10 days of pleasant sailing, Han Li had arrived at Jiayuan City, which was mentioned in Dr. Mo's will, and sailed into an unremarkable dock. The first impression the dock gave Han Li was that it was far too decrepit. The dock was constructed entirely from simple wooden panels. Not only was the place narrow and crude, but rotten baskets and broken bags were also strewn about, making the dock incomparably dirty. Standing on the 2 bamboo piers at the sides of the dock were several tens of bare-chested men who wore only short pants and emitted a strong odor from their sturdy builds. Currently, all these sturdy males were staring unblinkingly at him and crooked soul. Not only that, but there were also some who even revealed a fervent look in their eyes. Han Li was surprised for a moment, but he immediately smiled faintly. Before disembarking from his small boat and descending onto the dock, the boatman had warmly reminded him that inside Jiayuan City, the pier had an unwritten rule. No matter the amount of cargo that a passenger brought, he had to hire a porter from the pier to help him. If not, the passenger would face negative, unkind treatment from the harbor gangs and might even get beaten up. Since this was Han Li's first time here, he had no intentions to disrupt the social customs, so he honestly asked, "I need to hire a porter. Is there anyone available?" Sun Ergu retracted his sight. From his previous inspection, he could already tell that the youth who had just left the boat was a young master from some rich clan. Not only that, but also the giant man was most likely his bodyguard. This type of pair was frequently seen throughout the year whenever young masters from wealthy clans came to visit Jiayuan City. These young masters were often here to expand their horizons and spend their money before going back to boast. Thus, there wasn't much to be bothered about them. But these types of people, who loved to slap themselves until they were swollen in order to look imposing, made for perfect targets. As long as he used sweet words to flatter them, these country bumpkins would scatter their money about freely. As a result, they were a good source of business to the shopkeepers here. However, it wasn't the 4th-level gang's turn this time around. According to his prior agreement with Black Bear, the 2 gangs would take turns doing business with the unsuspecting tourists, and stealing customers would not be tolerated. As for the amount of money to be made, it depended on their luck. The day before, they had made a deal ensuring that today was the Black Bear gang's turn. Thinking of this, Sun Ergu glanced over to the side, only to see Black Bear's men discussing in a low voice. Shortly after, a man ran excitedly towards the direction of the youth. "Out of the question. It's impossible for you to carry my belongings alone. Call another person over." Han Li commanded as he looked at this robust man, glanced at the large amount of baggage on Crooked Soul's back, and lightly shook his head. "Young master, I'm strong enough to carry such a small luggage with just one hand. There's no need to look for others." The muscular man wasn't willing to split his earnings with the other porters. Not only that, he was sure that there was no way he wouldn't be able to carry the baggage unless it was filled with stones. After he finished speaking, the muscular man walked in front of Crooked Soul, with the intent to snatch the luggage away. Han Li sighed. Inside the luggage, there was about 2,000 taels of silver as well as an assortment of other random items. The total weight, which was not light at all, was impossible for ordinary humans to carry. But seeing how passionate the muscular man was, Han Li could only helplessly signal Crooked Soul to hand the baggage over to the muscular man before he tried to snatch it. As expected, once the baggage was in the muscular man's hands, his countenance underwent a drastic change. He expended his energy but could only walk a few steps before running out of breath. Embarrassed, the man had to put down the baggage and eventually called one more person for help. Han Li finally nodded his head in satisfaction upon seeing that the two of them were able to carry the baggage. He quickly left the harbor, walking on the path that led to the city. It wasn't that Han Li lacked knowledge about how the world functioned. Although his experience in Jianghu was limited, he could sense the pair staring at him through eyes filled with greed. Little did they know that they were about to invite trouble of a magnitude that they would not be able to handle. Seeing the youth's back moving further and further away, Sun Ergu retracted his covetous gaze. He suppressed the joy within his heart and locked his eyes with the eyes of Black Bear, who was on the opposite side of the dock. Both of them knew that within the baggage, there was most likely an immense wealth. As expected, Black Bear was also filled with joy. He slightly hesitated before flashing a look over to Sun Ergu, who intuitively walked towards a nearby rubbish dump. Before this huge source of wealth, even if Black Bear was the one who killed Sun Ergu's father and stole his wife, he would also be willing to put aside all grievances and work together. After all, humans die for wealth while birds die for food. Man will do anything in his power to become rich. 50-50, Sun Ergu said in a low voice. 30-70. This was originally our prey, Black Bear directly refuted. 40-60, and I can't lower it any further. Your explanation is not enough to make me concede, Sun Ergu stated in a sly manner, hitting the nail on the head. This, Black Bear hesitated. Naturally, he wanted to maximize his own profits. HMPH, you can take your time to think all you want, but I'm afraid that people from the other gangs already have their eyes on this fat sheep. Sun Ergu coldly snorted. All right, we'll do it your way. Let's strike our palms to seal the deal. Black Bear was obviously agitated by Sun Ergu's words, but he quickly agreed to the offer. Pa Sun Ergu and Black Bear spat on their palms and struck each other's palms 3 times, forming a temporary alliance. Okay, quick. We need to catch up to him before he disappears into the crowded areas, Sun Ergu hurriedly exclaimed. He, don't you worry. I've already instructed the two whom he hired as porters to lead him into a backwater alley. Let's hurry over there now to intercept them. Considering himself quite crafty, Black Bear laughed. Excellent. What a cunning plan, my old brother. Sun Ergu's expression broke into joy, but inside his heart shuddered. He silently reminded himself to increase his guard when dealing with Black Bear. He planned to first have a proper rest and then think of his other affairs. These two men didn't hesitate to lead Han Li into the city. On the way, they turned 7 corners and changed directions 8 times. After they walked for a good while, he hadn't seen the slightest trace of an inn. Although Han Li continued to follow behind the 2 porters, he saw that with each passing road intersection, his surroundings became increasingly desolate. He wrinkled his brow. Although he hadn't lodged within a large city before, he still knew that it was impossible for an inn to be established in such a secluded place. What customers would possibly arrive here? Thus, when they brought him into a filthy, dark alley, Han Li bitterly smiled. He felt that he should immediately restrain the two and torture them into telling him what sort of scheme they were planning. Just as Han Li had thought to act, 10 large men suddenly appeared further up ahead in the alley. These men seemed somewhat familiar. Indeed, he had seen them earlier at the docks. These men held a variety of iron clubs and daggers. At this moment, they gazed at Han Li and Crooked Soul with malicious intent. In addition, those 2 porters who were carrying Han Li's luggage suddenly charged into the crowd and turned their heads, giving Han Li a sinister smile. Han Li sighed. It seemed he no longer needed to interrogate them because he realized their plan. He didn't expect that, as soon as he stepped foot on Dr. Mo's hometown, he would come across a cheap plot to kill him for his money. Boy, don't blame our cruel hearts. You should blame whoever let you bring this much silver for your bad luck, a coarse voice spoke from behind him. Han Li turned to look, finding 7 to 8 robust men appear behind him. They were led by 2 men. One of them was tall and burly and had black skin, while the other had a crooked head and rat eyes. They were Black Bear and Sun Ergu. This was not the first time these 2 had done this kind of shady business, plotting to kill and steal. They clearly understood that, So long as the job was done cleanly and no witnesses remained, the authorities would not take notice of it. After all, even if someone were to report a missing foreigner, the amount of people that went missing each year was far too great. It was impossible to expend the great amount of effort to look for them one after another. That was why, after Black Bear had finished talking, he did not hesitate to signal several men to charge. Those men brandished their deadly weapons and quickly surrounded Han Li and Crooked Soul. Seeing these large men's bloodthirsty, cruel appearances, Han Li could not help but feel a desire to kill flash through his eyes. He knew that these men had done such deplorable acts on more than one occasion, otherwise they wouldn't reek so strongly of blood. "Kill them all, do not hold back," Han Li coldly commanded Crooked Soul. Upon hearing Han Li, Crooked Soul let out several soft roars, each roar carrying a trace of excitement. It suddenly charged out, rushing directly into the crowd. "Who?" The giant let out a punch as fast as lightning, hitting a large man's head. That robust man became like a bag of sand, flying crookedly into a stone wall. His blood and brains streamed all over the ground. Only half of his head remained. At this time, one man wielding a dagger and another with a crude iron club took this opportunity to attack Crooked Soul's back. Crooked Soul didn't turn its head. Instead, it waved its arm behind its neck, slashing around in a semi-circle. Peng, peng, the pair's weapons flew into the air along with the hands grasping them. Fresh blood dripped down between their thumbs and forefingers. Crooked Soul immediately stood on a single leg and swept the other leg behind him like a sickle as fast as the wind. The two assailants were immediately kicked in the abdomen and flew more than 3 meters away. They fell onto the ground, motionless. When the others saw these events, they sucked in a breath of cold air. A look of fear flashed in the faces of the men surrounding them. They became somewhat hesitant to attack. Even though they had stopped their hands, Crooked Soul shot its arms out without restraint, smashing the skulls of the 2 men who were at his side. Without Han Li's command, it would not stop its hand of its own accord. Sun Ergu and Black Bear's complexions were very unsightly. It was very clear that this large figure that they had mistaken as an ordinary bodyguard was actually a peerless expert. "Kill this man. Each person who participates will be rewarded 20 taels of silver." Sun Ergu had an unclear premonition in his mind and hastily sent out the several experts at his side by issuing a great reward. As soon as the men beside Black Bear and Sun Ergu heard this, their faces showed an expression of joy. These shallow martial artists only knew some basic boxing skills and naturally couldn't tell that, against Crooked Soul, the difference in their strengths was like the distance between heaven and earth. They had merely believed that their opponent was simply a little stronger than them and slightly more skilled. Thus, they possessed no fear at all. Now, galvanized by the temptation of a great reward, they charged towards Crooked Soul one after another. After Black Bear heard Sun Ergu's words, his face twitched, but his face soon became calm. Without saying a single word, his gaze simply drifted erratically to and from Han Li. Currently, Black Bear was constantly complaining to himself. He and Sun Ergu were different. He was able to climb to his current position because he could rely on his strength in an exchange with real weapons. This was why, in addition to having an adequate physique and exceptional eyesight, he could enter the ranks of third-rank martial artists. As a result, when he saw Crooked Soul fight, his heart jumped like a spear. When his heart finally fell to the ground, he could see that Crooked Soul's skill was great profound. Even if the 2 gang leaders were to join the fray, their odds of success would not necessarily be high, let alone with their weak subordinates, who were like kittens and puppies. However, he didn't dare to flee because this large man had clearly not exerted his full strength. If Crooked Soul were to see him attempting to escape, Black Bear feared that he would die a faster death. In order to live, it seemed that he could only attack that rustic youngster, whose status was far greater than the large man's. Only by threatening this man with a hostage could Black Bear possibly escape from death. As for the silver, he wouldn't dare ask for it. With such a ferocious bodyguard, perhaps he was the young master of some wealthy provincial lord. He was clearly the son of some influential family and was disguising himself for a stroll. Today, Black Bear could escape death. Even if he had the blessing and protection of the gods, taking the heavy bundle was naturally an entirely different matter. Black Bear thought of this and decided to take advantage of his subordinate's charge. After he signaled Sun Ergu with his eyes, he stealthily approached the stage. Although Black Bear tried his best to soften his footsteps, how could it possibly escape Han Li's notice? As the distance between Black Bear and Han Li shortened to just a few steps, Black Bear started to sprint, moving frenziedly like a demon. Han Li lightly shifted his body slightly and pivoted to directly face Black Bear, revealing a smile on his face. Black Bear was shocked out of his wits, but he could no longer stop his momentum. Helplessly, he could only roar as he extended his black hairy hands, grabbing ruthlessly towards Han Li. He estimated that Han Li was just someone without much battle experience, and should have been shocked immobile by his savage, demon-like rush, thus rendering him vulnerable upon seeing the black, burly man recklessly raise his hand against him. Han Li's expression suddenly sunk. His body flickered and disappeared right in front of Black Bear's eyes. Black Bear's roar became stuck in his throat as he quickly halted his steps, planning to run away. Suddenly, he felt the point of a sword that shone brilliantly like snow coming into contact with his throat before it disappeared once more. Black Bear rapidly covered the bleeding wound with his hands and attempted to speak. However, only some unintelligible grunts was heard before his corpse fell onto the ground. The color of Sun Ergu's face turned waxy yellow. He had witnessed the youth moving like a specter, as he appeared behind Black Bear's back and easily sliced Black Bear's throat with a flexible sword he had drawn from his waist. Afterward, the youth took out a white cloth and wiped the blood off his sword. The young man raised his head and flashed a smile at Sun Ergu, almost as if he could sense Sun Ergu's gaze. As if he had seen a poisonous snake, Sun Ergu quickly retracted his gaze. His longtime enemy, Black Bear, had just died, but he felt not a hint of joy or excitement. On the contrary, he felt sad and mournful, like a person in distress. He was completely awake now, and he knew full well that this young man was no fat sheep, but rather a King Yan from hell who wanted his life. The only slight trace of hope that Sun Ergu had left was whether his subordinates were able to defeat Han Li's giant bodyguard. If that were the case, then he would still have a chance at surviving, enabling him to negotiate with the young man and thus saving his insignificant little life. But as soon as Sun Ergu saw the situation unfolding over there with the young man's giant bodyguard, he became dumbstruck like a wooden chicken. Lacking the strength to move even a single muscle, over 20 burly men were lying on the ground, bleeding profusely. The giant bodyguard glanced coldly in Sun Ergu's direction. Although a mantle was obscuring the giant's features, Sun Ergu could still feel a bestial, bloody aura emanating from the large figure, causing his waxy yellow face to turn pale white. Han Li observed the variation of expressions on Sun Ergu's face, and from his movements, Han Li determined that this person did not know martial arts. Looking at Sun Ergu's face of abject terror, Han Li disdained from dealing with Sun Ergu personally. "Crooked soul, kill him," Han Li commanded. "No, please, I surrender. I'm willing to give up all my fortune to young master. I'm willing to work like a slave, and I know all the news floating around Jia Yuan City. I could be a good lapdog for young master." Sun Ergu walked over, step by step, towards the large man whom he viewed as a demon. Begging for mercy in a panic, he frightenedly limped across the ground. "AI?" Han Li originally wanted to ignore Sun Ergu's words, but as soon as he heard that Sun Ergu knew all the news regarding Jia Yuan City, his heart was moved. He became filled with joy. "Stay your hand for now," he commanded to Crooked Soul, who was about to twist Sun Ergu's neck. Han Li walked forward, stopping right in front of Sun Ergu. "Are you very familiar with Jia Yuan City?" Han Li smiled as he asked, taking on the very appearance of kindness. Just earlier, Sun Ergu had seen Han Li's ruthless side, so how would he dare to be slow to reply? Immediately, his voice quavered as he shouted, "Very familiar, extremely familiar. I grew up here, so I know everything that happens here as if it were on the back of my hand." Now it was as if he had grabbed onto a life-saving strand of grass. He couldn't help but wish he could make himself sound more useful by a tenfold so that Han Li would feel that he was still of use. Hearing Sun Ergu's reply, Han Li touched his own nose in consideration before pulling a bottle out from his robes. He took out a white, longan-sized medicine from the bottle and handed it to Sun Ergu. "Either you consume this or you die," Han Li told him in straightforward manner. The hand that Sun Ergu extended to take the medicine trembled violently. He hesitated while looking at the white pill in his hands before shifting his eyes to meet Han Li's cold gaze. Coughing a few times, he had no choice but to ingest the pill. "Good, I can trust you now." Satisfied, Han Li nodded his head. "The name of this pill is Rotten Heart Pill, and it was personally concocted by me. Every month you need to consume the antidote, or else your inner organs will rot, causing you to die. I believe that you are an intelligent man, and you will serve me to the best of your abilities." Han Li coldly and threateningly stated. Sun Ergu was already prepared in his heart, but upon hearing the effects of the pill he had just consumed, he couldn't help but to wail pitifully, appearing extremely depressed. "Relax. As long as you help me settle what I need to do in the Jia Yuan city, I will neutralize the poison and return your freedom back to you. Based on your martial skills, I can't really put you to good use anywhere else." Han Li used both the stick and carrot, giving Sun Ergu the assurance that as long as he completed his task well, there was still some hope that he would be freed. "Truly, young master?" Sun Ergu's expression slightly trembled upon hearing this news. "Take these tails of silver with you and clean up this place. I don't wish for this matter to spread, do you understand?" Han Li commanded as he tossed a bag of silver over to him. After catching the bag, Sun Ergu weighed it in his hand. It was heavy, as if there were about 200 taels of silver inside. An expression of joy appeared on his face. He realized that if he could work for such a man with riches and authority, it might not necessarily be a bad thing. "Young master, please leave this to me. I will handle this well without creating any trouble for you." He laughed as he patted his chest proudly. "Okay, I shall leave first to find an inn. Tomorrow morning, come look for me. Since you yourself claim to be the local head in Jia Yuan City, you should be able to find out which inn I will stay in." Han Li commanded again, without a trace of politeness in his voice. "Yes, yes, tomorrow morning I will be there waiting for young master's commands." At this stage, Sun Ergu could only be described as eager to become Han Li's lackey. Han Li smiled as he gestured to Crooked Soul, who picked up the baggage and left the alley. After walking a distance, Han Li turned back and glanced at Sun Ergu, only to find him obediently standing there at the same spot. Sun Ergu was using his eyes to respectfully send Han Li off, showing an expression of fear and loyalty. "Interesting?" Han Li suddenly felt that this person was extremely interesting and intelligent. Perhaps he could really put him to good use in a sticky situation. "The gang I founded, the Fearsome Flood Dragon Association, possesses 64,000 common gang members. Core gang members include more than 7,000 people. It is also one of the 3 great overlords of the land province. Its main branch is set up in Jia Yuan City, and its side branches are. Throughout my life, I married 5 women and witnessed the birth of 2 daughters, my apprentices. First wife Jin, she had a gentle disposition. She was the sole daughter of the Golden Lion Escort Company's head escort chief, Jin Kan. She has already passed away, leaving behind her daughter, Mo Yuju. Second wife Li was educated and well-balanced. She was the daughter of some rich household. Unfortunately, she did not have any children. Third wife Liu has a bold disposition, but she is rather ambitious. She is the younger sister of Qualang City's Lord and Wind sect leader, Liu Feng. She bore no children, pay great attention to her. Fourth wife Yan is my younger female cousin from my mother's side. She has a calm disposition, excels in scheming, and has great ingenuity. She raised 1 daughter, Mo Kei-Huan. Before I departed, I bestowed most of my authority over Fearsome Flood Dragon Association to her. You can trust her. Fifth wife Wang is taciturn. She was infatuated with me and was previously first wife Jin's personal maid. She did not bear children, and she secretly grasped hidden strength. You can trust her unconditionally. Adopted daughter Mo Feng Wu is the daughter of my confidant and subordinate. After her parents died, I received her as an adopted daughter. Before I left, she had just turned 7 and was exceptionally intelligent. Yan Ji, eldest disciple, his aptitude is common. I have already passed on the cultivation methods for demonic silver hand over to him. Before I left, he was 12 years old. His temperament is average. Zhao Kun, second disciple, I already passed on the sleeping dragon arts to him. Before my departure, he was 10 years old. His temperament is indiscernible. Ma Kongshan, my sworn little brother, he serves as a protector for the Fearsome Flood Dragon Association. His temperament. Han Li held in his hand a paper filled with handwriting, Dr. Mo's will. Currently, he was inside Hu Yuan Inn's top room, walking to and fro repeatedly as he remained lost in thought. The will was written attentively. Not only did it clearly explain the powerhouse that Dr. Mo had established, the Fearsome Flood Dragon Association, but it also crudely described the temperament of his wives thoroughly. This caused Han Li's heart to sink slightly. What was mentioned in his will were matters from 10 years ago. The present state of affairs were sure to have undergone an absolutely earth-shaking change. How should this be done? Should he contact Dr. Mo's wives or steal the Yang jaded treasure and escape without a trace? These decisions required Han Li to fully understand the current state of affairs. Thus, the local thug he subdued yesterday, Sun Ergu, was of great use to him. Han Li could probably acquire a lot of useful information from him. After Han Li carefully read through the will, he put it away into his bosom. Then, lost in thought, he raised his head, walked to the bed, and sat down. He spread his legs and raised his palms to the sky before setting them on his knees. Afterwards, he shut his eyes and began to inspect his body's condition. The thread of cold yin poison inside his dantian had started spreading outward a month ago. It was originally just a trace of an indistinct shadow, but it had currently condensed into a black pea-sized sphere. In addition, it's slowly beginning to grow in size. According to Han Li's estimates, he would have 2 months at most before this yin poison thoroughly broke out. When that time came, he feared that he would truly be hard-pressed to escape death. Just as Han Li was worried sick as he secretly resolved himself to acquire the warm Yang precious jade, someone knocked on his door. "Come in," Han Li coldly said as he opened his eyes. The room door softly opened, and Sun Ergu walked in with his head lowered. As soon as he saw Han Li, he acted with the greatest of courtesy, declaring respectfully, "Greetings, young master. Sun Ergu has come to hear young master's assignments." "Not bad, you found me quite quickly. You truly do have some skill," Han Li said in satisfaction. He then stood up from the bed, and then, with his hands behind his back, he walked in front of Sun Ergu. "I am indebted by young master's praise. If I could not perform such a small, trivial task, then for what reason would young master have spared my humble life?" Sun Ergu's happy face showed a great loyalty. When Sun Ergu had returned that day, it wasn't as if he hadn't thought of informing his superiors of the matter regarding Han Li and have experts come to take revenge. But when he thought of the rotten heart pill that he had consumed, his courage thoroughly disappeared. After a night of great consideration, he couldn't think of any other options and was left with no choice but to obediently pay Han Li a visit. He only wished that when he provided his assistance in the future, he would be given the antidote to this frightening, rotten heart pill. "First, tell me your status. From your appearance that day, it would seem that you're a small chief," Han Li indifferently said. "I am a dock overseer for the Western City District's 4th-level gang. I have about 450 subordinates and could be considered a minor gang leader." Sun Ergu replied respectfully. "4th-level gang?" Han Li dully asked. "That's right. 4th-level gang is one of the 33 small gangs in the western part of Jiayuan City. It has about 1,000 gang members, but most of them are dock coolies. The gang head is the ape, Shen Zhongshan. He has 3 great protectors as subordinates." Sun Ergu immediately gave the complete details discreetly. Although he had revealed information about his gang to an outsider, his face didn't have the slightest amount of shame. "That large, dark-skinned man I took care of yesterday, was he also part of the 4th-level gang?" "He was not. That person was called Black Bear, and he was a gang leader of the Iron Fist Group, another one of the 33 gangs. We were not on good terms with one another," Sun Ergu replied with a flattering smile. "Even though this is just the western part of the city, there are already so many small gangs. Thus, in the entire Jiayuan city, the total number must be quite large, right?" With his hands behind his back, Han Li unhurriedly returned to the front of the bed. "Of course. In the entire Jiayuan city, there are more than 40 small gangs with 1,000 members or less. There are 7 to 8 medium-sized gangs with 3 to 4,000 members. With regards to the large gangs that have over 10,000 members, there are only 3. Sun Ergu stood there, speaking with absolute honesty. "Tell me about the state of affairs in both the large and medium-sized gangs. You don't need to tell me about the small gangs." Han Li pulled up his sleeves and sat down on the bed. Afterwards, the calm Sun Ergu started talking. "The 3 largest gangs in Jiayuan City are the Brothers Union, the Fearsome Flood Dragon Association, and the Heavenly Tyrant Sect. The smaller gangs are the Iron Spear Association, the Sworn Brotherhood, the Azure Clothed Gang, the Spring Rain Building, the Gold Sword Sect, the Dark Riverboat Gang, the Diamond Sect, the Setting Sun School, and several other sects." Sun Ergu named all these gangs in one breath. Panting, he continued, "The strongest of the 3 large factions is the Heavenly Tyrant Sect. It is allied with the Gold Sword Sect and Azure Clothed Gang, and they occupy the Eastern City District, which is the most prosperous district. The Brothers Union, which is slightly weaker, is allied with the Iron Spear Association. The Dark Riverboat Gang and the Sworn Brotherhood occupies the northern city district. The weakest, the fearsome Flood Dragon Association, rules over the southern city district, alongside the Spring Rain Building, the Diamond Sect, and the Setting Sun School. Lastly, the chaotic western city district is divided amongst numerous smaller gangs. Although these small gangs are constantly involved in power struggles, if a larger power wanted to invade the western city district, then the smaller gangs would cease fighting and face the external attackers. Thus, the entire Jiayuan city could be considered a four-sided confrontation. Sun Ergu's words came out like a torrent from his mouth, never ending. Without even pausing to think, he had explained the general state of affairs of every power within the city. After Han Li heard the explanation, he muttered to himself for a moment before thoughtfully asking, "I've heard people say that the fearsome Flood Dragon Association was one of the land province's 3 overlords, and that Jiayuan City was where it originally established its headquarters. How did it become the weakest of the 3 large gangs of the city?" "Young master, what you said is ancient history. Many years ago, the fearsome Flood Dragon Association was truly ferocious, and its power nearly encompassed the entire land province. As a superpower during that time, the fearsome Flood Dragon Association had its headquarters located in Jiayuan City. It was originally intolerant of other gangs stepping in, and as a result, the fearsome Flood Dragon Association controlled the entire city by itself. Back then, the other gangs didn't even dare to show their shadow under the fearsome Flood Dragon Association's intimidation. However, for an unknown reason, the fearsome Flood Dragon Association suddenly decayed in power overnight. Not only did it lose some of its territories, the power of its headquarters in Jiayuan City greatly waned in power. Thus, gangs of all sizes took advantage of this opportunity and emerged from hiding. After several bloody battles, the situation we have today took shape. Sun Ergu explained this while remaining extremely politely. "Do you know why the fearsome Flood Dragon Association suddenly weakened?" Han Li slowly asked Sun Ergu, furrowing his eyebrows. To tell you the truth, this humble person's status in his gang isn't very high. I truly do not know much about this, and the few things that I do know were told to me by other people. It seemed that the fearsome Flood Dragon Association had an internal conflict that led to a civil war. Its decline can also be attributed to other large powers that suppressed them from behind." Slightly embarrassed at himself for not knowing enough information, Sun Ergu gave Han Li a vague answer. "Oh, so it was like that?" Han Li slightly smiled. It seemed he had guessed this was the situation earlier. "Who is currently in charge of the fearsome Flood Dragon Association? You should at least know who," Han Li asked. "I do know who. The person in charge of the fearsome Flood Dragon Association is Lady Yan, the widow of the former fearsome Flood Dragon Association's leader, Mo Juren," Sun Ergu hastily replied. "Widow?" Han Li was astonished. "That's right, the original founder of the fearsome Flood Dragon Association, Master Mo, died. Does his wife not become a widow?" Sun Ergu blinked and grew somewhat hesitant. He did not know if he said something wrong. Who said that the association's Master Mo died? As his complexion turned colder, Han Li sensed that something was out of place. "Everyone in Jiayuan City knows about this. A year ago, Ghost Hand Mo Juren's last disciple revealed that he had obtained Association Master Mo's will and keepsakes. With these in his possession, he announced Master Mo's death at the Mo estate." "Last disciple. What was his name?" Han Li calmly asked, raising his eyebrow. "He is Wu Jianming, a 20-year-old pretty face. Rumors have it that he has already inherited Mo Juren's teachings and his martial arts are incomparably high," Sun Ergu carefully told Han Li. At this moment, he already realized something. He was certain that this person was somehow related to the fearsome Flood Dragon Association and seemed to be paying close attention to that young Master Wu. In addition, Sun Ergu seemed as if he wanted to say something but didn't dare to. "If you have something to say, then speak frankly. Don't hold back. If this information is true, I will bestow upon you great rewards." "I have heard people say that this young Master Wu is intimate with the Master Mo's daughter, Mo Yuju. I have also heard that they will soon marry each other." Hearing that there would be compensation, Sun Ergu spoke the truth freely with a smile on his face. "Marriage?" Han Li chuckled and suddenly stood up. He paced back and forth several times in the room. Afterwards, he looked up to the ceiling and stopped. He seemed to be thinking of something. "Hear this well, your mission is quite simple. From today on, you will secretly gather information for me regarding the Mo estate. As for young Master Wu, the more details about him, the better. Take this silver. If this affair goes well, there will be even more rewards. Go handle it. Henley casually tossed Sun Ergu a pouch of silver. I will follow your orders. Esteemed young master, please be at ease, for I will handle this matter well. This humble man will no longer trouble you, and shall take his leave. Sun Ergu clutched the silver in his hands and walked out, beaming with joy. Before leaving, he had even took the time to politely close the door. This esteemed young master is truly generous with his money. All he wants me to do is a trivial task of gathering information. It seems that choosing to follow this person on that day was truly the right choice. Sun Ergu excitedly thought. At this moment, the matter of the rotten heart pill had been pushed to the back of his head. After seeing Sun Ergu's happy face as he walked out, Han Li lightly sighed. He suddenly felt somewhat regretful. He had been here for a mere 2 days and had already given away so much silver. This made him feel like a money squanderer. It is no matter. This silver could be considered as silver from Dr. Mo's account, even with the addition of a bit of interest, Han Li thought, finding joy in his sorrow. However, this young Master Wu Jianming is truly a clever person for actually trying to be the first to use his own identity to infiltrate the Mo estate, effectively acquiring power and wealth simultaneously. His courage is certainly admirable. Han Li stroked his nose with a cold smile. It seems that a visit to the Mo estate is inevitable. Otherwise, the precious warm yang jade will not be included in the dowry and instead will lie in that person's hand, Han Li thought, somewhat regretfully. The residence's courtyard had a large black gate from which a hanging sign revealed 2 words, Mo Estate. Beneath the sign, 8 large, imposing men were stationed evenly on both sides of the gate. Each of these formidable men held his head high and chest out with complete concentration. With just a glance, people would never dare to look down upon their well-trained and valiant appearances. The 3-story fragrant restaurant was just across the street from the Mo Estate. The popularity of this large restaurant resounded in the entire Jia Yuan city. In addition, its signature drink, 100 cents, was famous for being a great wine, and it attracted many famous customers who passed by. It was currently time for the midday meal. As a result, the fragrant restaurant was packed with people. All the tables from the 1st floor to the 3rd floor were packed with eating patrons. On the road, those who were about to pass by restaurant would smell the strong aroma of food and drool with hunger, completely captivated by the smell. On the 2nd story, a youth sat next to the window, watching the street. There were quite a few tasty side dishes on his table, along with a bottle of the famous 100 cents. Behind the youth stood a large, intimidating man. This youth was none other than Han Li, who was scouting for information. At this moment, Han Li gazed down at something from the window. He turned a small wine cup that was filled to the brim in his hand, but his food sat on the table untouched. Overall, he seemed absent-minded and careless. Han Li shot a tilted glance at the nearby Mo estate before looking down to the streets below him. His face's expression didn't change in the slightest. Raising his head to drink the cup of wine, he continued to look outside mysteriously. Han Li had already asked about Dr. Mo's 2 biological daughters and his adopted daughter. They had all grown up to become as delicate as a flower, as refined as a precious jade, beautiful and charming. They were known as Jia Yuan City's 3 great beauties. As a result, they were often referred to as the 3 prides of the Mo estate. Because of their beauty's great fame, they have been wooed by far too many young masters and heroic elites to count. Among these women was Mo Yuzhu, a peerless beauty. Amongst the 3, she was the one who was the most pursued. Thus, the news of her betrothal roused a great ruckus and broke the hearts of the men who were trying to woo her. There were a few martial artists that had challenged this young Master Wu one after another. Wu Jianming ended up defeating 16 of these rivals of love in succession, thus consolidating his reputation as a peerless martial artist and causing him to be inseparable and closely intimate with Mo Yuzhu. Han Li thought that this matter was truly somewhat amusing and ridiculous. Others didn't know that this young Master Wu had some sort of inside information. However, Han Li was aware of the entire situation. Wu Jianming was sure to have been dispatched from Dr. Mo's enemy school. It seemed that the Dr. Mo's long absence had caused his enemies to grow suspicious. This young Master Wu had probably arrived to scout out the situation. Han Li did not know by what means he had been able to obtain the trust of the Mo estate, but the letter alone probably shouldn't have been enough to easily convince Dr. Mo's wives. Han Li used his finger to lightly tap the table as he contemplated about the matter. "Young master, please sit here. The dishes you ordered should arrive at once." The waiter, wearing a short, white jacket, hurriedly led a blue-clothed man, who was 27 to 28 years old, to the second floor. In addition, the waiter had the man sit at an empty table next to Han Li. He then hastily returned to the first floor to take care of the other customers. This blue-clothed man was handsome. He had thick eyebrows, big eyes, and somewhat of a heroic air about him. After he sat down, he took a quick glimpse around his surroundings and just happened to meet Han Li's gaze. Han Li felt a profound, indescribable valiance from within the man's gaze that made him feel as if his very being was being absorbed. After a moment of shock, Han Li quickly turned his head away as his complexion faintly changed. This person was also greatly surprised. However, after giving Han Li a cold glance, he immediately turned his head, no longer paying any heed to Han Li. Han Li's complexion turned somewhat pale. Just a moment ago, a glimpse at that person had given him a feeling like that of having one's guts seen from inside out, overwhelming him with great shock. This was Han Li's first time experiencing such a glance, the kind of glance that made him feel as if his entire being had been completely exposed. After the blue-clothed man waited for his dishes to fill the table, he began to eat. Not only did he eat quite heartily, he also ate as if there were no one else there. At this moment, the frustrated Han Li was somewhat restless and worried. Although he currently didn't use the Heaven's Eye technique to observe the man, he felt quite a large amount of spiritual energy faintly emitting from the man's body, making Han Li stiff from awe. He clearly understood from this person's magic power that the man's cultivation, no doubt, was far deeper than his own. Back when he looked at the cultivators Yu Zhidong and Monk Golden Light, he had only seen feeble, pathetic magic powers that completely lacked the fundamental essence of life. Upon his encounters with them, he had been able to easily get rid of them both. Thus, Han Li still didn't understand a lot about cultivators. In his mind, cultivators were a mysterious existence. He truly didn't know how he should respond to another cultivator stronger than himself. Could I not treat this blue-clothed man like Monk Golden Light and unceremoniously eliminate him with my own hand? Han Li's mind could not help but think in the worst direction. While Han Li's thoughts were in turmoil and fear, the blue-clothed man had finished eating. He wiped his mouth with a hand towel, dropped a silver ingot on the table, and left like a breeze. From the beginning until the end, he never looked at Han Li again after their initial glance. It seemed that the man had completely forgotten about Han Li. Han Li waited until after this person had completely left the restaurant before exhaling deeply and lying down on his chair, paralyzed. Although the time during which the blue-clothed man ate was short, Han Li felt as if an entire day had passed by. The stress placed upon his mind was far too great. He felt as if he had just fought a battle of life and death. At this moment, the blue-clothed person appeared at the corner of the street. A 30-year-old man wearing a yellow jacket was waiting there for him. "Old Fourth, why have you come so late? We still have to meet up with eldest brother and the others." The yellow-jacketed man had some discontent in his voice. He, second eldest brother, don't be angry. It's just that I haven't had mortal food for several years. I just went to have a taste," the blue-clothed person said with a joyful smile. "You glutton, how many times do I have to say this? We immortal cultivators should cleanse our heart of desires and abstain from gluttony, but you never listen. Your consumption will, at the very least, damage your nature greatly." The yellow-jacketed man glared at the blue-clothed person and sourly lectured him. He, I know, you don't have to tell me that again. Oh yeah, back at the restaurant, I saw another cultivator." The blue-clothed person tried to change the topic, hastily mentioning his encounter with Han Li. "Oh, really? Was his magic power deep or shallow?" Sure enough, this had captured the yellow-jacketed man's attention. His magic power was quite light. It seemed as if his cultivation base had just reached the 7th or 8th layer. He barely has the qualifications to participate in the Immortal Ascension Assembly. This truly does not make sense. With such shallow magic power, did he come to the land province to exploit some sort of opportunity? Could it be that he truly believes that he will come across unexpected success and obtain the final victory at the Great Immortal Ascension Assembly? The blue-clothed man flung these words from his mouth. Is he young or old? He looked to be 17 to 18 years old. If that is the case, he definitely followed his elders here in order to increase his experience and broaden his horizons. I reckon that in the Immortal Ascension Assembly 10 years from now, this talent would genuinely be able to participate. The the yellow-jacketed man said with a smile. I say, when you say it like that, his talent can be considered decent. If he comes back in 10 years, he could reach my level. The blue-clothed man said proudly. Stop boasting. Your cultivation base has merely reached the 10th layer. Every year, the Immortal Ascension Assembly produces many cultivators at this level. Once you've trained to the 11th or 12th layer, then you will be given the qualifications to boast. The yellow-jacketed man said while laughing cheerfully. Truly, if I hadn't used the Foundation Establishment pill, I could have trained to a level higher than the 10th layer. But then, what Immortal Ascension Assembly could I have participated in? I wouldn't have been able to find a master. The blue-clothed man pouted and murmured before following the yellow-jacketed man and leaving the area. He was still celebrating the fact that he had just escaped from a calamity. Although he was angered by the blue-clothed man's disregard for him, Han Li was extremely clear about the disparity in their strengths. Now that he had escaped, he felt as though he had just escaped death, so Han Li became extremely relaxed. After his encounter with the blue-clothed man, Han Li's heart couldn't calm down, so he could not recover his initially peaceful state of mind. Sighing, Han Li stood up and prepared to leave the inn. At this moment, the sounds of horses galloping suddenly rang out in the large street outside of the inn. The sound was getting closer and closer as the horses galloped into the vicinity. He was just about to stand up, but his attention was piqued. He sat back down and cast his gaze once again to the large street. According to the report by Sun Ergu, the sounds that the incoming horses were making was the sign that the Most Estate's eldest daughter, Mo Yuju, was returning back to the city from her travels outside. Rumors had it that this precious lady from the Mo Estate didn't enjoy doing what other girls her age did. Ever since she was young, she only showed interest in wielding the spear and becoming the leader of a gang. Thus, her elders organized an expert from the fearsome Flood Dragon to teach her martial arts. What was truly shocking was that this Miss Mo especially loved hunting, a sport that was supposed to be an activity exclusive to males. Every 2 to 3 days, Miss Mo would travel to the forest outside the city to hunt. This incited the various clans' young masters, who wanted to woo her, to go hunting with her, chasing after eagles and hounds in hopes of obtaining her goodwill. Naturally, after young Master Wu had arrived, he too joined in this activity. After Han Li had heard the news, he was also curious about this eldest daughter from the Mo estate. After all, a girl with such a character was rarely seen. He hoped that such a lady wouldn't disappoint him. Now, there were over 10 horse riders galloping from the end of the street. The frontmost riders consisted of a man and a woman. The male had a pair of sword-shaped eyebrows, a bright gaze, a lanky figure, and the look of a handsome, heroic youth. The female was wearing a fiery red hunting suit, along with a purple-colored veil to cover her face, hiding her facial features. In the blink of an eye, the group of hunters passed the front of the inn, past Han Li's sight, and finally stopped at the gate of the Mo estate. The 2 burly guards who were originally standing there immediately greeted them. One of the guards, a man with a face full of pockmarks, respectfully greeted. Eldest Miss and Master Wu, both of you are back. How was today's harvest? Not too bad. Tang lead the horse away and help me take care of this wild game. The female wearing the hunting suit ordered. Before she dismounted her horse, she extended her hand to take off the veil that had been covering her face, revealing a face that could startle hearts and move souls. Roger that, miss. The one named Tang showed that he dared not to even gaze upon the enchanting visage of this female as he hurriedly took over the reins and led the horse away, walking towards a side gate. Although the inn and the Mo estate were a distance away, Han Li could still see about 70 to 80% of the girl's features as he involuntarily drew in a huge breath. That shining snow-white skin, that dainty little nose, those black, sparkling eyes, and those ruby-red lips were all capable of sinking fishes and causing geese to fall from the skies. This lady is none other than Mo Yuju. No wonder she's capable of causing all the young masters in Jia Yuan City to go crazy for her. For such a supreme beauty, even toppling over empires wouldn't be strange. Han Li could not help but to think of her in such a way. By this time, the other hunters behind the handsome youth had all dismounted. Servants came forth and led their horses away. The youth smiled as he walked in front of Mo Yuju and whispered something to her, causing Miss Mo's face to redden. She gently hammered the shoulder of the male youth before shyly glancing at him and eventually running through the gate. The youth laughed as he walked inside with an elegant demeanor. This person was Wu Jianming. He really does know how to coax a girl. In any case, his looks are still passable, Han Li sourly stated in his heart. He knew that if they were to compete based on looks, there was no way for him to win against the handsome youth. It seems that Mo Yuju and this handsome young master have a deep relationship. He furrowed his brows, feeling slightly pressured. It seemed to him that this matter would not be settled as easily as he had imagined. No matter what, I must obtain and secure the precious warm Yang Jade. After all, there is an extraordinary yin poison in my body that might explode earlier than the predicted date. Han Li was deeply worried and anxious. He contemplated about the Mo estate again before summoning the waiter, settling his bill, and returning to the inn that he was staying at. After he pondered long and hard, Han Li decided to use the most direct and effective method. He planned to infiltrate the estate in the middle of the night and visit Lady Yan, the wife of the fearsome Flood Dragon Association's former leader. He intended to use the items that Dr. Mo had left for him and expose that impostor in the Mo estate. As for how he was going to get the precious jade, he could only wait and see, moving step by step. Since he had already made up his mind, Han Li no longer concerned himself regarding the consequences of his decision. He shut his eyes and began to prepare himself mentally for his nighttime activities. However, Mo Yuju's beautiful face kept surfacing in his mind during this span of time. No matter what he did, he wasn't able to banish his thoughts about her. Did I fall in love with that girl? Han Li asked himself, somewhat unnaturally. He consoled himself, saying, such a ravishing beauty, it's only normal that I would be attracted to her. I may not like her for certain. As someone who already made half a step onto the path of cultivation, although he had never had a relationship before, Han Li still tried his best to avoid matters such as love and courtship between the opposite sex, even though he had never had a relationship before. About 3 in the morning, Han Li changed into a set of black clothes and sneaked out of the inn. He lightly sped past the roof and easily evaded the patrol on the streets, arriving outside of the Mo estate. After he checked out he smiled to himself, then transformed into smoke. As he drifted past the eyes of the guards, he entered into the backyard of the Mo estate without alerting them or causing them to notice anything out of the ordinary. The flowery fragrance that the garden emanated was still revitalizing even though it was night time. Han Li involuntarily breathed in deeply. "AI!" Han Li suddenly slightly exclaimed. Although the fragrance of the flowers was thick, he could still differentiate between the familiar smells of herbal medicine. "Someone planted medicinal herbs in here." Han Li lightly smiled. This familiar herbal scent caused him to feel extremely curious about the person who had planted the herbs. It appeared that someone within the Mo estate had inherited Dr. Mo's medicinal skills. Han Li did not dare to hesitate any longer. He continued on the little path and walked towards the areas that were lit up. Along the way, Han Li discovered that there were quite a few hidden sentries. He would not have detected the Mo estate's tight security if it weren't for his heightened senses. Since he had already discovered the hidden sentries, sneaking past them became an extremely easy task. Han Li stopped in front of a small, 2-story building. He chose this spot because he could sense that security was much tighter in this particular location. There were about 20 to 30 people guarding this area. This particular 2-story building was well lit. He knew that there was probably someone of extreme importance who had yet to fall asleep, which coincidentally suited his purposes. Making use of the dark night, he moved at a lightning-fast pace, his body blinking as he arrived at the bottom of the building. Using the strength in his legs, he easily jumped up onto the 2nd story of the building. The whole process took but an instant. The surrounding sentries did not even notice that Han Li had already infiltrated the building. Han Li kept his body close to the walls, causing his shadow to merge into the night, before pricking his ears, trying to use his sense of hearing to discern any movements in the building. Although Han Li could only hear a single female talking, he could discern that there was more than one person in this building. The branch from Changping Town sent over 73 taels of silver. The branch from Luogu Town sent over 58 taels of silver. The branch from Lanyue Town sent over 10,500 taels of silver. Wu Ling Town? This is all of the profits that we received last month from our association's various branches. Overall, it's about 25% less than the profits we gained in the same month of last year. The sound of a melodious female voice that was filled with vitality drifted into Han Li's ears. The moment that he had heard it, he speculated that it belonged to a youthful female. She was somewhat unhappy, judging from the last words she had spoken. Mother, these branch managers are getting bolder and bolder. The tribute they offer is increasingly less as the months go by. The youthful girl angrily stated. I am well aware. Another low, attractive voice rang out. Could she be one of the three ladies of the Mo clan? Han Li was somewhat shocked at his good luck. It seemed that the other woman in the room was Dr. Mo's wife. Every time you say that you're aware about this, why don't you offer some ideas on how to settle this? If this continues, then all of our branches will no longer put us in their eyes one day. The youthful girl complained. I don't have any good ideas right now. You must know that the branches are controlled by Fifth Mother. The others in the Mo clan have no way to interfere. The woman could only helplessly reply. Afterwards, the exchange of words stopped, allowing silence to descend. After several moments, the youthful girl's voice rang out in an unwilling tone. Mother, could it be that we allowed Fifth Mother to have sole control over the branches? After Uncle Ma and the others got into a dispute, their infighting pushed into branches into a position where they became the pillar of support for our fearsome Flood Dragon Association. Mother, since you are the representative for the Flood Dragon Association, this power should instead be in your control. What you said is correct. The year when your father left, he had passed the authority of the branches over to Fifth Mother. I don't really have an excuse to interfere. And because Fifth Mother grants us a large portion of the monthly tribute, I don't have the face to bring up the topic. The woman replied, but the strength of our fearsome Flood Dragon Association is actually extremely weak. If we don't consolidate our strength, how can we ever rise again? Father is not thinking straight. He handed the reins of the association to you, but why did he also give Fifth Mother the authority over the branches? The tone of her words was filled with resentment against her father. Stop your nonsense. Your dad did this. Naturally, he had a deeper meaning behind his actions. It's not your place to criticize. The woman berated the youthful girl. I understand. I acknowledge my mistake, all right. Seems like Mother is still deeply in love with Father. The girl acted out of the ordinary and started laughing at her mother. This child! The woman loved her daughter very much. Speechless, she could only laugh bitterly. Han Li had already confirmed that the woman in the room was the Lady Yan he was looking for. In addition, the girl should be Mo Kei-Huan, the daughter of Lady Yan and Dr. Mo. He was fortunate for having found who he had been looking for in such a quick fashion. Han Li extended his hands, touching the letter and the items left behind by Dr. Mo, and prepared to reveal himself to the two of them. Mother, that faker was extremely irritating. Today he found me at the garden and actually tried to shamelessly curry favor with me. He intended to sell me a few of his strong points, trying to appear as one who is skilled in both studies and martial arts. How disgusting! The girl added the last bit coquettishly, startling Han Li and making him withdraw the foot that he had originally extended into the room. You better be more courteous to the one surnamed Wu. After all, he is your fiancé in name. Don't let him notice anything that could make him suspicious. Lady Yan's tone grew heavy as she reminded the girl. Cough! This beautiful me is always surrounded by admirers, but you want me to act as though I've fallen head over heels with that man. That's too difficult of a task for me. If it were up to me, I would have run him through with a sword long ago, the girl replied. This matter is also out of our control. Although we know that the one surnamed Wu is a fake and have fully investigated his background, we have no choice but to sacrifice the reputation of your older sister by interacting with him to buy some more time. After all, our enemy is too strong. If they realize that they can't win against us through wits, they might use force, making us lose any chance of victory. Lady Yan's voice was filled with tiredness, revealing traces of physical and mental exhaustion in her voice. This man surnamed Wu is truly repulsive, fabricating a letter and actually using father's name to marry eldest sister. Truly infuriating, Mo Kei-Huan uttered hatefully. Her despise for Wu Jianming was bone deep. Fortunately, it only mentioned your eldest sister. If the person that he had requested to marry was either you or Fengwu, I would truly not know what to do. With both of your temperaments, how could either of you possibly endure and falsely cope with this person? The only one who has to suffer is Yuju. I don't know when Lord Husband will return and whether or not he will blame this mother, Lady Yan softly told her daughter and sighed. Mother, how could father blame you? Wasn't it eldest sister who took the initiative to socialize with the man surnamed Wu? Mo Kei-Huan immediately consoled Lady Yan. Foolish child, Yuju has no option but to do this for the sake of the fearsome Flood Dragon Association and the Mo estate. However, the most mother could do was have your eldest sister interact with that fake. There is no way I can truly marry your eldest sister to him. If we cannot delay the wedding, then we will be forced to be hostile and capture him." Lady Yan's voice grew cold as she spoke this last sentence. Once Lady Yan uttered these words, the room's atmosphere returned to a state of calm. It was clear that this mother-daughter pair knew what hostility would entail. "When will father finally return?" Mo Kei-hyun faintly asked a moment later. "When your father left, he had said that the latest that he could return would be 5 to 6 years from then, the earliest being 2 to 3 years, Lady Yan sadly replied. "However, it has been almost 10 years. I can no longer clearly remember my father's appearance," Mo Kei-hyun slowly said. "Be at ease. Your father happens to be an outstanding genius of his generation. With his hidden skills, there are no problems that he can't overcome. He was definitely delayed over some important matter and will soon return to the Mo estate." Although Lady Yan was speaking to her daughter, she was trying to comfort herself as well. "Oh, that's right, second sister Fengwu concocted a rejuvenating cosmetic elixir for me to give to you. Mother, why don't you try it out? I heard its effects are quite good." In order to break the room's heavy atmosphere, the girl suddenly changed the subject and started chatting about another matter. "This child..." Following along with the mother-daughter pair's mundane gossip, Han Li didn't hear any other useful information. Han Li discovered from their dialogue that Lady Yan's relationship with Dr. Mo was quite intimate. It seemed that Han Li could trust her. After a moment of contemplation, Han Li felt that personally appearing and tolerating this fake young Master Wu was a better alternative by far than allowing the possibility of something insidious occurring. Nevertheless, Han Li had to first secure the precious warm Yang Jade. As he thought as such, Han Li fished out a dragon ring, one of Dr. Mo's keepsakes, from his bosom. He then quietly walked towards the room window and threw the ring into the room through an opening in the paper window covers. Dang! The clear sound of the ring falling to the ground resounded from the room. A moment later, Lady Yan's voice, neither arrogant nor humble, came from inside the room. "Who is this expert that honors my humble home with his presence? Lady Yan has not yet welcomed you. I hope you will forgive me." Han Li faintly smiled and refrained from replying. He heard the girl's frightened voice. "How strange! How did this ring come from? This ring seems very familiar. It's just like the ring you wear, Mother. Mother, come look!" It was clear that Mo Kei-hyun had picked up the ring and handed the ring over to Lady Yan. "Dragon ring!" Lady Yan cried out in alarm. After Han Li had heard the other party recognize the keepsake, he lightly knocked twice on the door before saying in a clear voice, "Under Teacher Mo's orders, Disciple Han Li has come to pay his respects to Martial Mother." After those inside the room had heard Han Li's words, there was an immediate and absolute silence. Han Li's words had clearly left them in shock for a short while. "Come in." After a moment, Lady Yan's voice invited him into the room. It was at this moment that Han Li lightly opened the room door and stepped inside. Upon entering the room, Han Li saw a beautiful, 30-year-old lady. Sitting behind her was a dainty girl around 15 to 16 years old. The girl and the beautiful woman shared a striking resemblance. With just a single glance, one could tell that they were close blood relatives. At the moment, the beautiful, married Lady Yan fiddled with the dragon ring he had just thrown into the room. Han Li's arrival had not elicited a change to her flat expression. Mo Kei-hyun stood behind Lady Yan and blinked her jet-black eyes, curiously sizing Han Li up. The corner of her mouth rose and revealed a smile that was not a smile. From head to toe, she released a strange, almost supernatural smell. After they had assessed Han Li, he walked forward and carried out a courtesy toward Lady Yan. "Greetings to teacher's fourth wife?" Lady Yan's eyes blinked with a look of surprise. Although Han Li's appearance was not astonishing, his action was quite unexpected. However, she didn't immediately respond to Han Li's greeting. Instead, she raised her left hand, revealing her own dragon ring. Lady Yan gently brought together both rings. In front of their eyes, the two rings' dragon designs fit together without even the slightest gap. "You are right, this keepsake is authentic. However, do you have Lord Husband's written letter on you?" Lady Yan gently asked, now revealing a few traces of a smile. As soon as Han Li heard this, he took out the letter that had been prepared long ago and handed it over to her with both hands without saying anything further. Lady Yan, seeing Han Li act respectfully towards her, nodded her head in satisfaction as she accepted the letter. Then she unfolded it and carefully read its contents. Han Li withdrew to the side while calmly observing the expression on the face of his teacher's wife. He thought about the change in her attitude towards him as a visiting disciple and a future son-in-law. The letter was not at all complex. It merely sent word that Han Li was Dr. Mo's last disciple, and that Lady Yang could place her complete trust in him. In addition, he could be used to settle any troublesome disputes the Mo estate may currently have. As long as Han Li could preserve the Mo estate's safety, Lady Yan was to choose one of Dr. Mo's 3 daughters as Han Li's bride. The letter also laid clear instructions that the dowry was to include the precious warm Yang jade. It even went as far as to say that Dr. Mo was currently occupied with an important matter and could not return and reunite with his wives. This way, Lady Yan and his other wives wouldn't have to worry about him. Although Han Li could not find anything unfavorable towards him in the letter, he was certain that the letter contained a few of Dr. Mo's tricks. Han Li knew that it was impossible for the outer writing to be so simple. However, he could not find the method to reveal the hidden message. In addition, he wished to bring this letter to the Mo estate as soon as possible. Only after gathering his courage did he deliver this letter to Lady Yan, but he was especially careful to monitor Lady Yan's each and every move at this moment. He truly wished that this 4th wife wouldn't make something out from the letter and then immediately turn hostile, demanding his arrest in order to avenge her late husband. Fortunately, the terrible scenario that Han Li imagined did not occur. After Lady Yan finished reading the letter, she simply tensely wrinkled her brow. Her face then wore an expression of great worry as she seemed to have made some difficult decisions. "Huaner, go call your 2nd mother and 3rd mother, even your 5th mother. Tell them there is news of Lord Husband." Lady Yan turned her head and instructed Mo Kei-Huan with a resolute tone. "Understood, mother. I'll go." Mo Kei-Huan knew this matter was serious, so she left obediently. However, just before she left the room, she pursed her lips and smiled towards Han Li. It seemed she was rather interested in this fellow. "You are called Han Li." Lady Yan raised her head, revealing a graceful and elegant expression. "That's right, 4th Martial Mother," Han Li sincerely replied. "Could you tell me how Lord Husband accepted you as a disciple?" Lady Yan asked with a smile. "I will do as you ask." Han Li hesitated for a moment, but soon after, he felt that there was nothing to hide about the events that led to his acceptance as a disciple. Using a few select memories, he slowly told Lady Yan a summary of what had happened. 8 years ago, because Teacher Mo's old injury had yet to heal, he lived in seclusion at the Jing Province's 7 Mysteries Sect Celestial Rainbow Mountains. There I had met him for the first time upon entering the mountain. Within Han Li's version of the course of events, 3/7 of it was false. The information that he could not divulge to Lady Yan was either completely revised or lightly skipped over. Even like this, however, the story had greatly captured Lady Yan's attention and interest. Han Li recounted the course of events with 3/7 being false. The information he could not divulge to Lady Yan were completely adapted or lightly skipped over. However, even like this, the story had greatly captured the attention and interest of Lady Yan. And that's how I became his disciple. Around 3 months ago, Teacher Mo was preoccupied with an important matter and was unable to spare any time to visit his family. However, he feared that he had left the Mo estate for far too long and that there would be enemies creating trouble for his wives. So he told me to leave the mountain first, come to the Mo estate to find the Teacher Mo's wives, and wait for his wives' orders. What's so important that could prevent my Lord Husband from arriving home first? After Lady Yan had Han Li's adapted version of the course of events that led to his discipleship, she sighed before faintly asking this question with a trace of grief. "Who is returning home? Dr. Mo has already been dead for soon to be 2 years. The corpse I buried underneath a tree is nothing but bones now." As Han Li heard this, he somewhat laughed to himself. However, with a face of humility, he replied, "What matters? Teacher Mo did not tell me. However, I am certain that it is an absolutely important matter," Han Li said somewhat ambiguously. "Humph. Did your master command you to keep it a secret from us?" Lady Yan asked with an enigmatic smile. However, the tone in her words was somewhat discontent. "It is by no means like that," Han Li quickly said. He secretly bitterly smiled to himself. This Lady Yan was truly mistrustful. With an unresigned appearance, Lady Yan opened her mouth to ask a few more questions. At this moment, however, the sound of chaotic footsteps could be heard outside the room. Before the owners of the feet entered the room, a lovely and charming voice spoke. "Fourth sister, I hear there is news of Lord Husband. Is this true? That devil left us 10 years ago. Does he want us sisters to become grass widows?" Han Li had been distracted with this sweet voice, but soon after realizing what was said, he became startled. This great aunt is far too bold, Han Li thought, amazed. Third sister, pay more attention to your words. There is still another person in this room, a slightly rougher woman's voice said in an angry fashion. I know this already. However, I heard that person delivering the news is Lord Husband's close disciple. It is impossible to keep up pretenses. What do you say, fifth sister? The charming voice had said, slightly happily. Impossible. Since fourth sister has called us to come, this man should at the very least be 70 to 80% trustworthy. An ice-cold voice said, That's right, fourth sister's judgment is truly admirable, the sweet, charming voice said, giggling. It was unknown whether this was said ironically or in genuine praise for Lady Yan. After Han Li heard these words, he stole a glance at Lady Yan, who was pressing her hand against her head with a helpless expression on her face. It seemed that the owner of that lovely voice often gave her headaches. The room door finally opened, and several beautiful women entered in succession. Mo Kei-hyun followed, entering last. However, she pouted with her small red mouth, appearing somewhat melancholic. The frontmost woman was approximately 31 to 32 years old. She was tall, beautiful, and composed with delicate features, and there was a scholarly air about her. She must have been talented since a very young age. Han Li inwardly nodded his head and brought his gaze to the young woman next to her. This one appeared 23 to 24 years old. The moment Han Li saw this woman's appearance, he felt his brains buzz. For an instant, he thought he had seen a lost goddess. His entire person had sunk into her gorgeous beauty and was unable to free himself. This woman's tender, beautiful figure was unexpectedly somehow even more gorgeous than Mo Yu-ju, whom he had seen during the day. In addition, the woman's incomparable grace was something Mo Yu-ju couldn't possibly have. If one were to say there were truly fox spirits on this earth, Han Li would unconditionally be convinced, as this woman was a completed transformation. Han Li was currently swooningly dizzy. Without Han Li knowing why, a thread of cold qi from his dantian suddenly escaped and flowed along his meridians toward the center of his head. After it completed one circulation, Han Li suddenly cleared his head. After recovering his mind, Han Li was startled and didn't dare to look at this woman again. He hastily avoided her gaze. This young woman could cause the death of an entire country. With the mere look, she can turn a man's soul and spirit upside down. Does she not know that her own exceptional appearance possesses demonic power? Or is this some sort of trained seduction technique? Han Li speculated while being overwhelmed with shock. The young woman saw Han Li look at her, but apart from being somewhat infatuated, he soon regained his mind. Her eyes could not help but flash a look of surprise. His eyes skipped over the alluring woman and moved on to the last woman. The last wife to enter appeared to be 26 to 27 years old. Although she was a charming beauty, one look at her ice-cold face would stop anyone in his or her tracks. In addition, ever since she entered the room, her cold stare had been aimed straight at Han Li. Lady Yan saw these people come in and stood from her seat, gently greeting them. Greetings, second sister and third sister. Fifth sister has also come. Fourth sister, you are too formal. We are all of the same family. There is no need to be so polite. Without waiting for the woman in front to speak, the extremely bewitching young woman covered her almond mouth and laughed. That laugh contained an alluring charm, causing Han Li to experience a burst of desire and a shaken spirit. He was speechless without end. Little sister doesn't dare. Sisters, please take a seat. Lady Yan slightly smiled and offered her own chair to the wife in the front. She did not sit until after the wife sat. The one called fifth sister was an elegant and refined woman. She silently sat across from Lady Yan. After the married women entered, Mo Kei-hyun knowingly closed the door and moved behind her mother. Her bright full moon eyes were spinning randomly across the room. It was unknown what exactly she was thinking. This youngster is the one that delivered the message. The woman of about 30 years of age looked at Han Li and faintly asked. That's right. According to the letter he delivered, this is Lord Husband's successor. Lady Yan easily replied. Soon after, she said respectfully to Han Li, this is your second martial mother. Are you not going to pay your respects? TL note. Martial mother literally? Teacher's wife. Instead of second martial mother, it could be teacher's second wife and so on. I pay my respects to second martial mother. Sharp-witted, Han Li stepped forward and formally bowed to the married woman. Stand up, since this is Lord Husband's favored disciple, there is no need to be overly polite. The married woman said with a smiling expression. This is your third martial mother and fifth martial mother. Lady Yan pointed to the abnormally gorgeous young woman and the elegant and refined woman, introducing them one by one to Han Li. Greetings to third martial mother and fifth martial mother. Han Li saw the young married women to be no more than a few years older than him. After a second of hesitation, he also bowed courteously. Han Li looked at Lady Yan with a face of doubt. She faintly smiled and said with a warm voice, "Your third martial mother stopped the aging of her face with a technique. Although she looks to only be of about 20 years, she is about the same age as your second martial mother." After Han Li heard this, he inwardly nodded his head, satisfied that his own guess hadn't been too far off. This alluringly beautiful young woman naturally practiced an unusual secret art. Otherwise, how else could she have captivated him with her mere appearance and rendered unable to control himself? "Second sister, this is Lord Husband's handwritten letter. Please look over it." Lady Yan handed Han Li's letter to second wife Lady Li. After Lady Li finished reading it, she passed the letter to the other two wives. Once the elegant and refined young woman, the last wife to read the letter, finished looking over the several wives were stunned into completely silence. Even the seemingly frivolous and gorgeous young wife, Lady Liu, had a solemn expression on her face. Completely lacking the boldness and alluring charm she possessed a moment ago, Lady Liu was instead showing an unexpected composure. When Han Li saw the appearance of Dr. Mo's several wives, he could not help but grow uneasy. He did not know what significant information the letter had revealed to cause these wives to be so serious. However, Han Li's calm expression hadn't changed since he first entered the room, making the wives think that he was reliable and had the bearing of a general. "Han Li, your teacher's letter has shocked us martial mothers far too greatly, so we'll need to properly talk this over. You've come here from far away, surely you must be tired. You should spend the night here at the Mo estate. Tomorrow, we will call you for questioning." Since Lady Yan had held the power of the fearsome Flood Dragon Association in her hand for several years, each and every one of her movements possessed an unspeakable dignity. Ultimately, she was the first to speak and instruct Han Li. "This junior follows your orders," Han Li replied with a complete obedience. The other wives did not block Lady Yan. It seemed they also agreed to have this outsider Han Li withdraw so that they could discuss a few sensitive matters. "Huener, bring your father's disciple Han to the rear residence and find him a clean room for him to have a proper rest," Lady Yan ordered Mo Kei-Huan. "Zai, I got it. Senior disciple Han Li, follow me." Mo Kei-Huan blinked her eyes several times, slightly wrinkled her nose, and started to be somewhat unwilling. However, she immediately thought better of it and agreed with a smile across her face. "You are forbidden from bothering your senior disciple, otherwise you will be punished by clan rules." Lady Yan knew the thoughts of her good-for-nothing daughter like the back of her hand, thus giving her a verbal warning in advance. "All right, I understand." Pouting her face, the young girl unwillingly agreed. Han Li was speechless. If Lady Yan hadn't said anything, would this dainty young woman have played some tricks on him? Han Li looked at Mo Kei-Huan with a peculiar gaze, and for the first time, he no longer saw this girl as adorable. As a result of her mother's interference, Mo Kei-Huan dispiritedly walked out the door. Han Li followed behind with an unmoving expression. Waiting several moments after Han Li had left the room, Lady Yan broke the silence in the room with her solemn voice. "Fifth sister, I'll have to inconvenience you to take a look around and see whether or not that boy has truly left or if he has secretly returned and is hiding somewhere. We're still not sure." After the elegant, refined Lady Wang heard this, she wordless left the room and disappeared into the dark. "Fourth sister, you overestimated that boy. How could he possibly be so skilled?" A light flashed in third wife's pretty eyes. "Third sister, you've truly forgotten about one thing. A disciple of our Lord Husband can't possibly be ordinary. I believe our Mo estate is quite heavily guarded. What's more, this building is an important location where I handle the association's affairs. Not far from here, there are 20 to 30 hidden sentries densely standing guard. But even with all of our defenses, he was still able to stealthily infiltrate his place without drawing my or Kei-Huan's attention. Do you think that this is something an ordinary expert can achieve?" Lady Yan quietly said. "From fourth sister's argument, it appears that the youth named Han truly has some ability," second wife Li gently said, while slightly wrinkling her eyebrows. Third wife hesitated a moment before sighing and speaking her mind. "There is no need to say any more. His concentration is already far greater than the fakes. I remember when that pretty boy Wu saw my face, my grand heavenly fox technique had infatuated him for an entire day before he recovered. The one named Han was initially only somewhat bewildered, but he had immediately cleared his mind afterward. It can clearly be seen that his mental energy is outstanding. He is by no means ordinary. After hearing these words, the three wives became quiet. Everyone appeared thoughtful, as if they all had something bad to say. After a moment, Lady Yan bitterly smiled and took the initiative to speak first. With such a ferocious person, it's impossible to discern whether or not he will bring fortune or disaster to our Mo estate. Take out the secret letter. Once everyone sees it, it will be clear. These words came from outside the room and were not spoken by Lady Yan, but rather by the refined, elegant fifth wife. She walked into the room. I have already inspected the surrounding area very carefully. There are no outsiders within a 200-meter radius, and the sentry guards were reinforced as well, fifth wife said expressionlessly. Lady Yan lowered her head in thought and eventually opened her mouth. You all surely remember the words Lord Husband gave before he left. After he departed, if someone delivered an unmarked letter without a hidden message, it would prove that he is safe and that we may feel at ease. However, if the letter was marked and concealed a hidden message, then it would definitely contain news that would be far from good. We must prepare ourselves mentally. As for this letter, we all saw that the letter was marked and concealed a hidden message. Regardless of how grim the news is, this is something we must face sooner or later. Let us take out and read the true letter. Third wife's voice was no longer sweet and charming, but was instead brimming with sorrow. Very well. Since everyone has finished preparing themselves, we will now uncover the hidden message, Lady Yan said decisively. No longer hesitating, she grabbed a teacup and kettle from a nearby desk and proceeded to fill the cup halfway with cool water. She then grabbed her dragon-shaped ring and lightly twisted it several times, unexpectedly separating it in two and thus exposing a hidden, white medicinal powder. Lady Yan carefully poured the medicine powder into the teacup and then looked to the people at her sides. Second wife Li gazed at Lady Yan and was the first to stand. She gracefully arrived in front of the desk and raised her hand. Her pure white finger unexpectedly also wore a similar ring. Lady Li took out a small amount of medicinal powder from the ring and poured it into the teacup. However, her powder was red and seemed to differ from Lady Yan's. Third wife and fifth wife followed with similar actions. They both had dragon rings that contained a yellow and a black medicinal powder, respectively. Lady Yan waited until after everyone had finished before picking up the teacup and lightly swirling it. As a result, the originally multicolored liquid actually became clear. Finished! The water has become clear. Second sister, you are the most skilled with your hands. It would be best if elder sister were to smear the paper, Lady Yan modestly said to second wife Li. After Lady Li heard this, she faintly smiled. With the letter and the medicinal water, she began to work. During this short amount of time, aside from Lady Li smearing the medicinal water on the letter's surface, there was a complete silence, causing the room's atmosphere to become more tense. It is done. The letter has been completely smeared. Next, we should have fifth sister help dry this letter with her inner strength. Lady Li straightened her body, wiping the fragrant sweat off her forehead and speaking to fifth wife with a smile. The cool, elegant young woman nodded her head and swiftly took the damp letter. She then extended her other hand, and with a slight use of force, a faint, blazing heat was emitted from her palm. She placed her palm 3 inches away from the letter and slowly dried it. After a short period of time, the letter was completely dried, and the letter's black ink had completely disappeared. In its place appeared some faint red handwriting. This was Dr. Mo's scheme to use Han Li to deliver a message to his wives, a hidden message. Han Li wasn't aware about what happened in the room after he left. At the moment, there was a little demoness standing before him that caused him to feel a large headache. While on their way, this third young lady Mo had unexpectedly and brazenly requested a so-called first meeting gift from her senior martial brother. What kind of present would junior martial sister like? Without a better option, Han Li helplessly pinched his nose and prepared himself to satisfy her request. Any precious stones, jewelry, or perhaps something fun and interesting will do. I'm not very picky. Actually, if you don't have anything, then giving 7,000 to 8,000 taels of silver will also do. This can be regarded as your test, Mo Kei-Huan said innocently without a trace guilt as she blinked her large, dark eyes. 7,000 to 8,000 taels of silver. When Han Li heard this, he nearly fell to the floor. This little demoness was like a lioness widely opening her mouth, not the least bit fearful for her life. Taking into account everything I have on hand, I don't possess such an amount of silver. Even if I did, it would be impossible to give it to her. Does she take me for a foolish squanderer? Although Han Li thought this, his expression didn't change. However, looking at the girl's expression, there was quite a bit of meaning in her gaze. Mo Kei-hyun was quite clever. With just a glance, she could make out some of Han Li's thoughts. She slanted her small mouth and deliberately shouted in surprise, "Senior Marshal Brother Han, you don't have a gift to commemorate your first meeting with this adorable junior Marshal sister. You should know that the year when I first met young Master Wu, he gave me a 10,000 silver banknotes as pocket money." The moment Han Li heard this, he grew angry. Of course, the one surnamed Wu is scheming for your family's wealth to receive twice the amount in return. I don't have the slightest intention to give you such a gift. In addition, your father planted a yin poison in me. My small life could end at any moment. Han Li was furious, but he simply looked up to the sky. Without moving, he looked at this little demoness and began wondering which item he had on hand was worth the least. Mo Kei-hyun saw this Han Li as an unsophisticated, dark boy who was actually playing the fool and not saying a word. He did not take notice of her, causing her heart to be somewhat worried. Ever since last year, after she had swindled a great amount of money from young Master Wu, she dreamed of another person to take advantage of every night. Now, after all that trouble, she had another opportunity. But this guy, who seemed to be her father's true disciple, was unmoved and even had a face thicker than a city wall. How could he act so hard and indifferently toward such a cute girl as herself? He didn't have the slightest bit of sympathy. Did he not notice her practiced tears quickly flowing down her cheeks? Still remaining indifferent, he was truly infuriating. Both of her eyes were ruthlessly staring at Han Li. In her heart, she was silently gnashing her teeth at this thick-skinned senior apprentice brother. At the moment, both of them had been standing on this little path that wound through the back courtyard for a quarter of an hour while suffering from the cold. They did not move as much as a single step. Originally, after Mo Kei-hyun realized that Han Li was impervious to her three ultimate moves, acting cute, acting coquettishly, and using tears, she could only helplessly gnash her teeth in frustration and stop walking. She initially intended to use these moves to trap Han Li, but succeeded to no avail. Now she could only unwillingly and pitifully stare at Han Li, locking her gaze with him, hoping that her opponent would give in. But upon seeing the pitiful state Mo Kei-hyun was in, Han Li involuntarily let out a laugh. Her expressions actually reminded Han Li of his good brother Li Feiyu. Previously, whenever Li Feiyu had wanted Han Li to help him with something, he would use the exact same expression on his face, hoping to move Han Li into helping him. After some time, Han Li became completely impervious to these kinds of expressions. Thus, as Mo Kei-hyun used her best pitiful puppy look onto Han Li remained motionless, standing there while admiring Mo Kei-hyun's performance. He frequently shook his head, indicating his sarcasm. Underneath Han Li's vicious counterattack, Mo Kei-hyun was utterly defeated. She could only stop the puppy look she had been utilizing until now and exchange it with a ferocious look of rage. Actually, Mo Kei-hyun already started to regret her actions. If her mother were to find out about this, she was afraid that not only would she not be able to con anything from Han Li, but she would also taste the discipline of their clan's rules. As she thought of this, she glared hatefully at Han Li. This little bumpkin, couldn't he just give something to her? Didn't he know that girls exist to be coaxed? He was truly nothing but a country bumpkin. As of the moment, she had already forgotten about her outrageous request she had demanded earlier from Han Li. Although Han Li had no experience in coaxing girls, he knew that he would nonetheless have to borrow the strength of the Mo residents, and thus could not afford to offend them. As a result, after Mo Kei-hyun's anger burned for some time, he slowly inserted his hands into his robes, trying to find a suitable trinket to appease this little demoness. Han Li finally took out a green jade bottle. Inside the bottle, there were a few flaming red pills that release an extremely strong fragrance. These pills were known as the winding fragrance pills. Taken by royal concubines, this pill had no other effect other than causing the one who ingested the pill to emit a mesmerizing fragrance. Not only did this fragrance last for a long time and was pleasant to smell, but it also could provide the additional effect of protecting the user from insect bites. That was why this pill was a favorite among the royal concubines. Treating the winding fragrance pill as a gift for the young girl, however, was quite a pity. Concocting this pill required a few main ingredients that were rare and precious. Even in such a prosperous place as the royal capital, the main ingredients were always found to be in short supply, unable to meet the royal court's demand. In the end, the pill had been lost with the passage of time. Han Li would never concoct such a pill that would do nothing to aid him. But during his stay in the Seven Mysteries sect, he finally caved in and concocted some of these pills for Li Feiyu to coax Zhang Ziyuer, because he was unable to withstand Li Feiyu's urging. All he had was just one bottle with only a few pills remaining. Initially, Han Li had wanted to use these pills to cloak himself from insect bites, but now he could only use this to coax the little demoness standing before him. Han Li threw the jade bottle in the girl's direction. Mo Kei-hyun fumbled with it for a bit and finally caught the jade bottle. "What is this?" A smile finally broke out on Mo Kei-hyun's face. She finally received a gift from this petty man in front of her. Although this was nothing much, this was sufficient to light up a smile on Mo Kei-hyun's face. This pill is known as the Winding Fragrance Pill, and its effects are very mystical. It can, Han Li explained the pill's effects to Mo Kei-hyun, causing her to be extremely happy and satisfied. Much to Han Li's surprise, after the girl opened the jade bottle and sniffed the fragrance, she immediately closed the lid of the bottle and assumed a defensive stance. With a defending against perverts gaze, she looked at Han Li and carefully said, "This pill is not a pill that knocks people unconscious or works as an aphrodisiac, right? Why is the fragrance so familiar to the aphrodisiacs that my sisters described? Are you planning to do something perverted to me?" After hearing this, Han Li was stunned for a prolonged period of time, becoming completely speechless. He suddenly felt like vomiting blood. This girl's thoughts were too hard to predict. To think that she actually likened the fragrance of the Winding Fragrance Pill to an aphrodisiac. Now Han Li don't even know whether should he be impressed this lady's cautiousness or cry loudly because of an unjust accusation. "Looking at your reactions, this pill seems to be authentic, but I still have to let my second sister experiment on it before I can use. After all, women have to place cautiousness above everything they do." Mo Kei-hyun told Han Li this in a righteous manner. "Cough, cough, do what you will." Speechless, Han Li could only cough to mask the embarrassment on his face. He felt that it would be better for him to maintain a distance between himself and this little demoness. If he didn't, he would never know when his depression would push him to his death. "However, if this pill does have all the effects you listed, I shall consider you to have passed the test. After today, if you ever require any help in the Mo residence, you can look for Kei-hyun. I will just require some small compensation, but in return I will settle your problems for you." Mo Kei-hyun shook the bottle while happily smiling. "Okay, junior apprentice sister. Senior apprentice brother does have something that requires your help." Han Li recovered his former disposition as he smiled insincerely. As he replied to Mo Kei-hyun, he thought evilly in his heart, "Seeking assistance from you, a money grubber. In your dreams?" Mo Kei-hyun naturally could not hear Han Li's inner thoughts. She felt satisfied because Han Li had acquiesced to her. All of a sudden, she felt that Han Li was pretty interesting fellow and was even quite comely to look at. "Let's go, senior apprentice brother. I will find a bigger and better room for you so you don't have to suffer." Mo Kei-hyun smiled brilliantly as she led the way. Standing behind her, Han Li finally heaved a sigh of relief as he slowly followed her footsteps. Such a strange girl. He would never be together with her. Don't say that this bossy miss suddenly fell in love with an ordinary person like him. Even if she really did fall in love with him, he would straight out reject her. Just based on her unreasonable actions that were already so tough for Han Li to deal with, he could never endure it if they really got together. Han Li silently thought in his heart, decisively removing Mo Kei-hyun's name from the list of potential candidates for his wife-to-be. Mo Kei-hyun was tactful enough to not linger around, and she quickly excused herself. Her sudden behavior as a refined lady left Han Li somewhat surprised. Han Li did not know whether there would still be danger, as he was still unclear about the attitude of the people in Mo Estate. As a result, he was unable to get any real rest and only dozed off a little on the bed. The next morning, while Han Li was still groggy, there was someone outside knocking the door. Could it be that little demoness? Han Li frowned, but soon shook his head. This smooth knocking sound is definitely not Mo Kei-hyun's style, but only a few people know that I'm staying here. Han Li was a bit suspicious. He found a towel to wash his face, then went to open the door. A 20-year-old youth with thick eyebrows and big eyes stood outside. Once this youth saw Han Li came out, he took a glance to look at Han Li from top to bottom, then respectfully cupped one fist in the other hand and greeted Han Li enthusiastically. "You must be junior apprentice brother Han. I am Yan Ji. I could also be considered as your eldest apprentice brother." Yan Ji? Han Li's thoughts raced. This person was Dr. Mo's eldest disciple. Haha, even though I am Master's first disciple, my aptitude is not that good. I didn't receive much of Master's own techniques and even humiliated him. Yan Ji told Han Li frankly. When Han Li saw that this youth was unperturbed, he immediately had a good impression towards Yan Ji and promptly returned the greeting. Senior apprentice brother Yan, good morning. Please come in and talk. There is no need. Several of our martial mothers asked me to come here. They are looking for junior disciple Han for something, and they want you to make a trip down. Yan Ji chuckled and beckoned with his hands. Han Li was stunned for a moment when he heard this, but he swiftly nodded his head and complied. He closed the room door and walked beside Yan Ji. Yan Ji was very interested in Han Li's affairs. Along the way, he openly asked Han Li many things. He was extremely curious about the local customs and culture of Jing province and asked about them endlessly. When the two of them passed through the garden in the backyard, they unexpectedly met a young man and lady. They were Mo Yuzhu and Wu Jianming, both of whom Han Li had seen from afar yesterday. The two were walking together in the garden, like a pair of intimate lovers. It was as if Han Li's own possessions were stolen by someone else, and that feeling left a bad taste in his mouth. Evidently, Mo Yuzhu and Wu Jianming discovered Han Li and Yan Ji, so the former pair headed towards them. As the two sides got closer to each other, Mo Yuzhu swept a glance across the ordinary-looking Han Li but didn't say anything. However, young Master Wu was suspicious of Han Li as he sized Han Li up. Senior apprentice brother Yan, good morning. This little brother looks unfamiliar. Whose disciple does he belong to? Wu Jianming laughed as he asked. At first, Han Li thought that elder brother Yan, who was beside him, would take the initiative to cover for him and counter Wu Jianming's remark. Who knew that after waiting for so long, there was still no sound from the person beside him. Feeling puzzled, Han Li can't help but to raise his head and look at Yan Ji. In the end, Han Li was so infuriated that he was rendered speechless. Currently, Yan Ji looked infatuated and spellbound, gazing dumbly at Miss Mo Yuzhu, fully into the realm of ecstasy. How could he still respond to Wu Jianming? This little brother is third martial mother's distant nephew. Under the orders of my parents, I was to pay a visit to third martial mother and request a job from her. For the lack of a better option, Han Li could only turn his head back and take matters into his own hands. Han Li spoke obsequiously while intentionally acting all embarrassed and shy. Oh, so it's like this. Once Wu Jianming heard Han Li's words, he completely lost interest in Han Li. This was not surprising. Han Li's outer appearance was too ordinary, and he did not possess any characteristics of a person who studied martial arts. How could this be missed by the eye of young Master Wu? Instead, young Master Wu turned his head and his expression darkened. He was greatly unsatisfied with the silly look that Yan Ji was showing towards Mo Yuzhu. After all, the beautiful lady beside him was his supposed fiancée. Right now, Han Li was close to Mo Yuzhu, so he clearly saw all of her expressions. She was frowning slightly and had a somewhat unpleased look. Clearly, she was not tolerant of Yan Ji's brazen look of adoration. Senior apprentice brother Yan, if there is nothing else, young Master Wu and I will retire first. Mo Yuzhu's apricot lips opened slightly. She coldly extended a small courtesy to Yan Ji and moved her delicate body to leave the area. Wu Jianming snorted at Yan Ji and chased after her without saying anything else. Han Li watched their backs departing as the corner of his lip revealed a slight trace of an odd smile. Afterwards, he turned around to look at senior apprentice brother Yan and discovered that Yan Ji was still gazing foolishly at Mo Yuzhu. Han Li sighed. This guy was truly love-struck. However, Miss Mo did not seem to have a good impression of him and may be frightened off by his fervent pursuit. Han Li hit Yan Ji's shoulders with all his strength, jolting the latter's body. The vacant look disappeared, and he was finally roused from his stupor. Sorry about that, I made a joke out of myself in front of junior apprentice brother Han. Yan Ji, who recovered back to his rational state of mind, was blushing madly. He was extremely ashamed of the spectacle he made of himself. It's nothing. When facing a fair and graceful lady with a noble character to match, this is a male's natural instinct. There is nothing to be embarrassed about, Han Li explained while laughing. When Yan Ji listened to Han Li's words, he did not feel relieved. Instead, he laughed bitterly and slowly said, "Not to keep you in the dark, but I grew up together with Yuzhu. During this period of time, even though we were not childhood sweethearts, we were both innocent playmates with deep feelings for each other. Unfortunately, when Yuzhu grew up, She treated me like a brother without showing any other interest in me. As a result, after being rejected by her several times, I could only give up and wish that she finds a good husband who can give her a lifetime of happiness. But one look at Yuju today, I find that I am still unable to free myself from my emotions and unknowingly made a show of myself. There was a hint of self-ridicule when Yan Ji spoke the last sentence. Han Li did not speak again after he heard Yan Ji's explanation. Instead, he looked at Yan Ji from head to toe, like viewing a rare antique. Previously, he only came across this kind of affectionate person from books and other stories. He never imagined that he would one day witness it with his own eyes. If what Yan Ji said was true and sincere, Han Li didn't know whether to admire Yan Ji's infatuation or secretly curse him for his extreme foolishness. On the way back, Han Li purposely used other topics to draw Yan Ji away from his thoughts and allow Yan Ji's mood to return back to normal. The two of them talked merrily until they reached the small building where Han Li sneaked into last night. Several of Dr. Mo's wives were already waiting there ceremoniously for Han Li's arrival, preparing to give Han Li a nice surprise. "Is it Han Li and Yan Ji?" "That is right, fourth martial mother," Yan Ji hastily stopped and respectfully replied. "Yan Ji, return first. Just Han Li entering alone will do." Lady Yan's faint voice could be heard from within. That distinct, cold voice could not help but touch Han Li's heart. "As you wish." Yan Ji was clearly very respectful of Lady Yan, and he followed her command without the slightest hesitation. After he smiled to Han Li, he quietly descended from the second floor. Only Han Li remained upstairs, waiting outside the room. Han Li coldly looked at the room door, but instead of immediately entering, he released his spiritual sense and scoped out the situation inside the room. He didn't wish to go in alone, only to be ambushed and killed by a room of hidden soldiers, so it was better to be a bit careful. It was very quiet in the room, and the number of people inside wasn't large. Han Li could only hear the breathing and heartbeats of Lady Yan and a few others. It appeared that there wasn't anyone that shouldn't be there. This greatly relieved Han Li. Thus, he stepped forward and lightly knocked on the door twice. He then opened the room door, planning to take a quick look before entering. However, what he saw in the room greatly changed Han Li's complexion. His step had stiffly halted mid-air. The room was the same as the night before. The chairs, desks, and decorations were all exactly the same. The only thing different were the beautiful women's style of dress. Lady Yan and the other beautiful wives were all wearing white silk mourning clothes from head to toe. They all sat on chairs and unwaveringly gazed at Han Li with cool eyes. Han Li's complexion turned somewhat pale. However, he was not scared, but rather annoyed with the deceased Dr. Mo. It was very clear why Dr. Mo, that old fox, had forced him to travel such a great distance. It seemed that he had guessed correctly. That letter had contained a hidden message that gave the tigresses news of Dr. Mo's death. It was as if they were waiting for Dr. Mo's murderer to visit them voluntarily. Han Li took a deep breath and returned his complexion to normal. He then entered the room in large strides. Without a trace of politeness, he looked for a chair and arrogantly sat across from the wives. After seeing them not say a single word, he planned to observe how these women would deal with him in the end. It was clear Han Li's completely unrestrained action was intended to tear away at their faces. However, largely against his expectation, he had thrown them into confusion, each of their expressions having nothing in common. Second wife Li's expression turned green. It was clear this Han Li, who had so clearly said martial mother yesterday, was now daring to brazenly act as if he were meeting with those of the same generation. This second wife was born of a scholarly family and paid great attention to generational separation. Now that she had come across this chap, who was unfilial towards his master, how could she not tremble with anger? Third wife Liu differed greatly from Lady Li. Not only did she refrain from getting angry, she also looked toward Han Li with a very interested expression. However, because of her astonishing glamour, Han Li didn't dare to look at her directly, and had simply looked at her with a sweeping gaze. Lady Yan and the cool, elegant Lady Wang were about the same. They wordlessly looked at Han Li with gazes brimming with a freezing chilliness. "Your courage is awfully great, my lord husband's last disciple." After the time it took to make a cup of tea, Lady Yan eventually opened her mouth, her words containing a mocking intention. Everyone could clearly hear her ridicule. "Martial mothers, whatever you wish to know or wish to say, please say them directly. I don't wish to hear nonsense or unnecessary words," Han Li said with a blank face. Han Li had clearly understood. If a wife were to bicker about how terrible she felt, and then the other wives would engage in a verbal duel. Rather than expand a great deal of effort to resolve this, he felt that he may as well get straight to the core problem. This was what he believed. Since there were no saber lights or sword shadows belonging to hidden experts inside the room, Han Li speculated that the wives currently had no plans to dispose of him. It seemed they either had misgivings or had demands for him. Since it was like this, there was no need to be too polite. In any case, Dr. Mo's death was an invitation for disaster. He had nothing to be ashamed of. Although Lady Yen had much knowledge about all sorts of battles between men, the rupturing tone of Han Li's words nearly made her speechless. Fine, I will ask then. Was my lord husband killed by your traitorous hands? Second wife could not help but want to spit fire from her elegant eyes. Her scholarly air had completely vanished, leaving behind only a face of resentment. Second sister? Lady Yan wrinkled her brow and softly called her as if to prevent the second wife's questions from immediately causing both parties to fall into disagreement. This Lady Li is actually quite frank to directly bring the most crucial question to the table. Han Li inwardly sneered, thinking of this. It could be said that I killed him, but it could be also said that he killed himself, Han Li said indifferently. This sentence caused the wives sitting across from him to be shocked. They believed that Han Li would either readily deny it or simply brazenly admit it. What were they supposed to do if they could not make sense of the answer? Second wife Li stared blankly for a moment, but she immediately became agitated. She clearly believed that Han Li was playing with them. What is this nonsense? It was clearly you who harmed him, Lady Li tremblingly retorted. How are you certain that I killed him? Did you see it with your own 2 eyes? Han Li asked, no longer polite. He clearly understood that Dr. Mo had written that he was murdered in the letter. Naturally, they weren't completely certain whether or not he had died by Han Li's hand. Han Li guessed that the letter, which Dr. Mo had set aside for these wives, contained nothing but a few speculative words. As a result, Han Li could completely refute these misgivings. Since you've said this, tell us women how our lord husband was murdered once through. If you are truly unrelated, we won't deliberately treat you unjustly. The cool, elegant fifth wife Wang, who had been silent all along, finally spoke. Then he sneered, saying, Treat me unjustly. Those are some grand words. You think I am truly scared of your Mo estate. Were if not for the many days I had teacher Mo for a master, imparting onto me his great medicinal expertise and the foul reputation I would receive for bullying women. Humph, against you with only a single hand, I could kill this entire Mo estate without allowing even a dog or chicken to remain. Han Li's words chilled to the bone, his expression extremely sinister. Han Li determined his plan. Since he was unable to cheat the Mo estate of the precious jade, he would adopt a sinister attitude and only used unyielding methods. He planned to show a bit of his skill and have the wives know that this man was difficult to handle, forcing them to hand over the precious warm yang jade. When Lady Yan and company had first heard Han Li's fierce words, they all had stunned expressions. But soon after, they smiled bitterly. Third wife Liu even bent backwards from her blossoming laughter. It was clear that these wives were not convinced by Han Li's words. But soon, their faces were completely frozen. That was because Han Li had extended a finger. A fireball suddenly appeared at his fingertip. When this wine cup-sized fireball appeared, the entire room's temperature suddenly rose. It was as if the wives had entered a scorching summer. Then Han Li coolly gazed toward them, as if he were trying to find a target for his fireball technique, in order to have these wives know he was somewhat ferocious. However, he did not expect that before Han Li made a move, Lady Li couldn't help but yell, Cultivator, with an expression of fear. The rest of them also turned deathly pale. Looking at the 5 wives with an ice-cold expression, he saw that they were emotionally moved and looked at Han Li with gazes full of astonishment. These women knew about the existence cultivators, but were unexpectedly frightened by Han Li. Their expression appeared even more gloomy. You truly are a cultivator? Third wife Liu widely opened his beautiful eyes, asking with some doubt. Han Li snorted, Hula. Without saying anything further, he simply shot the fireball toward the table next to Lady Liu and reduced it to ash in the blink of an eye. This action filled Lady Liu's face with fright, completely whitening it. She immediately stood and recoiled several steps away from the ashes before shakily coming to a stop. Currently, if any other man saw that lovely, delicate face, they would have immediately fallen crazy for her. Unfortunately, Han Li absolutely could not appreciate this view. He was currently staring at Lady Li, who had shouted, "Cultivator." He asked with a cold voice, "Second wife, how do you know of cultivators? Could it be you've seen other cultivators before?" "I." Lady Li became terrified. She was greatly fearful of Han Li's status of a cultivator. "Don't ask second sister. I will tell you about matter regarding cultivators." From the side, Lady Yan closed her eyes with a tired expression before interrupting Han Li's questioning. "Oh, then could you enlighten me?" Han Li stroked his nose, his expression somewhat relaxed. "This isn't something to hide. Jiayuan City has a large population, and everyone knows of the existence of cultivators." After Lady Yan opened her eyes, she said this with a bitter smile. "Even some people outside the city have seen the wars between cultivators with their own eyes. It is said they could call the wind, summon the rain, and control blasts of fire. Each and every one of them is like a living immortal." Lady Yan said this and looked at Han Li with a peculiar gaze. "So it was like that." Han Li patted the back of his head. He had unexpectedly forgotten that Jiayuan City was not at all a small region like the celestial Rainbow Mountains. Having cultivators appear here seemed to not be such a rare occurrence. Yesterday, did he not see that blue-clothed man? Then did Teacher Mo also know the existence of cultivators? Han Li thought of something and could not help but carelessly ask. Of course he knew. Lord Husband had seen the wars between cultivators with his own eyes. Lady Yan felt that nothing good would come from hiding anything and replied without hesitation. Dr. Mo was quite infatuated with cultivators, so it turned out that he had previously seen a true cultivator. Unfortunately, he did not have spiritual roots and wasted his many schemes, even bringing slight benefits to myself. Han Li thought, however. Han Li suddenly felt somewhat baffled. Why was Lady Yan currently so obedient? Whatever he asked, she sincerely replied. The slightest temperament was absent. On the mere basis that he was a cultivator, the other party had completely surrendered. Han Li found this hard to believe. Han Li carefully observed Lady Yan's expression and found that she had an easy, relaxed expression with some slight impatience. Could it be she's stalling for time? Han Li wrinkled his brow and released his spiritual sense. There was not a sign of a single outsider intruding near the building. Han Li looked around and suddenly stood. He walked around the room, carefully observing in every direction. It seemed there was nothing suspicious, and the furniture in the interior of the room were quite simple. Apart from the tables and chairs, it was the same as yesterday, all except for a white candle, half melted from its burning wick. Candle? Han Li's gaze fell upon the candle. He had originally believed the white candle was lit in memory of Dr. Mo, and thus he did not mind it. But now he remembered. Since they had been holding a memorial service for their Lord Husband, why did they not light any incense? This was somewhat abnormal. Thinking of this, Han Li used his nose to carefully smell and found the air to smell like sandalwood. This fragrance was far too light. If one did not deliberately pay attention, they absolutely could not perceive this. When Lady Yan saw Han Li look at the candle, she stood slightly less naturally. But after Han Li sniffed the air, her face greatly changed. At this moment, Han Li's face broke into a smile that was unusually cheerful. "What's so funny? Even if you discovered the trick of the candle, it's already too late. This bewitching drug can intoxicate 1,000 men. When ordinary people smell this, their bones loosen and their muscles become soft, losing all power in their limbs. Even when martial artists smell this, they lose their true chi and martial arts. Even if you're a cultivator, you've already been in this room far too long to remain unaffected." Lady Yan somewhat lost her patience and spoke those testing words. "It's nothing. It's just that I feel that my luck is not bad at all," Han Li said with a smile. "When I was at the Seven Mysteries sect, I have long heard of the methods employed by Jiang Hu's ghost sect, including their poison. I have received an extremely deep impression of bewitching sense, because I had previously suffered hardships and experienced dangers from which I couldn't protect myself. Because even a common man could use poisons to easily kill a great expert. I long racked my brains for a solution, until I finally figured out a way to protect myself from the silly methods of incapacitating drugs and poisons." Han Li somewhat contently stated. Lady Yan and company looked at each other in dismay. What kind of method was this? How could it be that he had still not collapsed? This must have been true. As of currently, the ladies' complexions had already turned completely white. As for what method? Seeing that the wives could not help but want to hear him spill his secrets, even tilting their ears, Han Li could not refrain from chuckling inwardly. I don't plan on telling you because I have a habit of not revealing my secrets to my enemies, Han Li said with a deadpan expression. Lady Yan was the first to calm down. She lightly straightened the jade pin in her hair bun and once again said calmly, "Even if your esteemed self is a cultivator and does not fear this bewitching scent, are you not worried about the yin poison in your body?" Nevertheless, she used her last trump card. The moment Han Li heard what she said, his smiling face immediately turned cold. Sure enough, Dr. Mo gave the only weapon that could be used to blackmail him to these women. "That's right, I have the cold poison in my body. But before this poison flares up, I don't mind turning this entire residence upside down and utterly slaughtering everyone." Han Li spoke in a flat tone, but the women clearly heard the threat within his words. Lady Yan was silent for a while and did not open her mouth to speak. The rest of them also did not say anything. It seemed that when it came to life and death matters, the one making decisions in Mo residence was still fourth wife Yan. "Since the both of us have scruples and we are not willing to let both sides suffer, let's have a good talk," Lady Yan said cool-headedly after that moment of silence. "Of course. I also don't plan on dying so uselessly at such a young age." Concerning his own life, Han Li did not put up any airs. He gladly agreed to her suggestion. Hence, he went back and sat in front of Lady Yan. "However, before we start discussing, I, your servant, would like your esteemed self to repeat how my lord husband got murdered. After all, we were once husband and wife. We would only be reassured if we knew the real cause of his death. But be at ease, even if Lord Husband died by your hands, we would not have any ulterior motives. After all, we are orphans and widows, we cannot go looking for trouble and personally seek the road to death." Lady Yan's last sentence was spoken so desolately, making it seem as if Han Li was the kind of evil tyrant who bullied women and children. One look at Lady Yan's face and Han Li can't help but have a headache. Even though he knew Lady Yan was just acting, when he saw her miserable state, he felt his heart soften a little. Wasn't it just telling them how Dr. Mo was murdered? There was nothing to cover up in this matter. After all, Han Li acknowledged that Dr. Mo's death was not his fault. Instead, it was Dr. Mo and Yu Zhidong who should be blamed for courting disaster. "All right, I can describe Teacher Mo's death in detail. But after you all have listened and still insist on taking revenge on me, I will oblige you at any time." Han Li agreed to their suggestion after pondering for a while. "Many thanks to young master." When Lady Yan heard that Han Li was willing to speak the truth, her face immediately opened up and revealed a delighted look. "This was what happened. I was deceived by Dr. Mo. After practicing eternal spring arts for 4 years, only then did I discover." Han Li patiently told them how he was cheated, poisoned by Dr. Mo and forced to practice the eternal spring arts. He explained that Dr. Mo had wanted to occupy his flesh body by entering his body and consuming his fundamental essence. Naturally, Yu Zhitong had then appeared and narrated the entirety of his schemes. Han Li finally discovered about his body's yin poison and had no choice but to come to the land province and detoxify himself with the precious warm yang jade. He narrated the events the way they truly happened. Han Li wanted these wives to know that in the occurrence of Dr. Mo's death, Han Li was the true victim. He hadn't slighted the Mo estate in the least. After Lady Yan and the other wives finished hearing Han Li's heart-shaking tale, they couldn't help but look at one another. If Han Li's words were true, then their lord husband's death was not truly Han Li's fault. In addition, hearing the methods that Dr. Mo had used and his shrewdness, they greatly matched the long-acquired impression they had of their dead husband. Furthermore, the bits of information that the hidden letter revealed didn't contradict his story in the slightest. They estimated that his story should more or less be true. If your esteemed self had spoken the complete truth, then our lord husband's death truly was not yours to blame. This was rather the fault of Yu Zhidong's ruse. Otherwise, how else would our lord husband have died? Lady Yan lightly sighed. Her words made Han Li raise an eyebrow. This Lady Yan is far too favorable toward her own lord husband. With a few words, she easily pushed the entirety of Dr. Mo's wrongdoings onto the deceased Yu Zhidong, cleaning Dr. Mo of the blame entirely, as if he were also a victim. Han Li stared at Lady Yan with widened eyes. Although his mouth did not say anything, his expression showed a strange emotion and made his meaning completely clear. Lady Yan, under Han Li's attentive gaze, did not blush or jump. She only turned a blind eye. Han Li inwardly bitterly smiled. This woman's face was quite thick, not one bit thinner than a man's. He could not help but turn his head to look at the expressions of the other wives. Third wife Liu still had a smiling, cheery appearance and didn't have the slightest change. When she saw Han Li looking over, she gave him several flirtatious glances, causing Han Li to remain silent. When second wife Li saw Han Li looking at her, she looked ill at ease and faintly lowered her head. She certainly was worthy of being called a girl from a wealthy family, as well as educated and well-balanced. It was clear she was somewhat ashamed of Lady Yan's words from a moment ago. As for fifth wife Wang, although this cool, elegant young woman was expressionless, she was entirely focused on tangling her fingers together, exposing an abnormality of her heart. As for her attitude, Han Li did not know. However, according to young master's words just now, we have no deep animosity or hate toward one another. In that case, it would be best to conduct peace talks. Lady Yan opened her almond lips and faintly said this. When Han Li heard Lady Yan's words, he turned his head and faintly stated, "What is there to discuss? Give me the precious warm Yang jade, and I will turn around and leave, cert to no longer disturb the Mo estate." "That is out of the question." Lady Yan faintly smiled and immediately gave a flat decline. "Why is it unacceptable?" Han Li said, unagitated. "Yesterday, young master was outside this servant's room and should have heard much of the vile situation the Mo estate is in. It should be quite clear to you, sir, that without external assistance, our Mo estate will be completely exterminated. It is only a matter of time. If it is like this, then it would better to have young master cleanly kill us sisters instead and have death end all troubles." Lady Yan pitifully lamented with red eyes. When Han Li heard this, he bafflingly stared at Lady Yan without speaking, directly looking at Lady Yan's scarlet cheeks. However, she stubbornly continued to refuse to meet Han Li's gaze. Han Li let out a long sigh. He now knew where Mo Kei-hyun, that little demoness, learned her clever schemes. It was clearly from imitating this older demoness. "With all this said and done, what do you all think? Be honest, I don't want to have to beat around the bush again," Han Li coldly said. It seemed he wasn't influenced by Lady Yan's act in the slightest. Lady Yan wrinkled her brow. The youth in her presence was far more difficult than she had anticipated. Neither hard nor soft methods were effective. Rather, she had no way of knowing how to deal with him. "Could it be that you truly want us to immediately hand over our last resort and reveal our affairs to the enemy?" Lady Yan was somewhat unresigned. With the many years of handling the fearsome Flood Dragon Association's power, she clearly understood when to be a bit lenient, and when to immediately put one entire hand on the table. She turned her head to look at fifth wife Wang. Within these sisters, only Lady Wang was able to oppose her decisions. Therefore, she looked at her to see whether or not Lady Wang had a proposal. "The matter of discussion with this person I will leave to fourth sister, with whom I have no objections whatsoever." Lady Wang saw the meaning in Lady Yan's gaze and said, as cold as ice. When Lady Yan heard this, she was inwardly elated and had somewhat calmed her heart. "Very well. Since Sir does not want to beat around the bush, then we sisters will get right to the point and directly tell you the conditions." As these words left Lady Yan's mouth, she completely regained her bearings as the leader of one of Jia Yuan City's 3 major gangs. The feeling of that delicate, powerless young married woman from before was completely obliterated. Her body dispersed the prestige of a leader. "Good. From the beginning, I wanted to engage in talks as equals." Han Li faintly smiled. "So long as you exterminate the fearsome Flood Dragon Association's sworn enemies, the Rainbow Sect and the Hegemon's Villa, the Mo estate will no longer trouble you in the future, and we will also immediately offer you the precious warm Yang jade. Furthermore, we will let you choose one of our daughters, whomever you fancy, as your wife. However, if you're unyielding in your plan, rob the precious jade from us, or perhaps threaten us sisters, then your esteemed self will have been mistaken. I have already handed over the precious jade to my trusted confidant. If there is the slightest sign of trouble, then it will immediately be destroyed, ending us in mutual destruction." Lady Yan said with an imposing expression. "Lady Yan, are you not afraid of the wind cutting your tongue? Have me, this one person, exterminate the Rainbow Sect and the Hegemon's Villa. You must be truly absurd for thinking of this." Han Li seemed to have already anticipated Lady Yan's threat and wasn't alarmed at all. He had already known that the precious warm Yang jade could not be acquired by acting rashly. Aside from their threats, he still didn't know how many secret recruits they harbored, and thus capturing the other party and interrogating the whereabouts of the precious jade would simply end in failure. It would be best to make the other party willingly give it to him. "Young Master Han, are you not a cultivator? How could these people of Jianghu be a match against your distinguished self? In addition, we don't want you to kill the gang in its entirety. Causing a few of their main leaders to disappear would be enough. This time, the gorgeous young third wife, after giving Han Li a soul-shaking, enchanting smile, said this with her graceful voice. What about being a cultivator? I don't know of other cultivators, but I do know of my own abilities with clear certainty. You can't just foolishly send one person to confront a large gang of several thousand members. Do you all truly believe that cultivators can outrageously murder ordinary people without fear of repercussion? Han Li coldly glanced at third wife. The awing chilliness froze her smiling expression. Under the effects of the eternal spring arts and a vigilant mind, he returned the gaze of her bewitching charming technique. How could it possibly affect him? Why? Does young master mean that there are limitations to what cultivators can do to ordinary people? Lady Yan asked, somewhat surprised by this revelation. I am not very certain of the specific details. After all, I haven't been a cultivator for long, so I wasn't truly in contact with these rules. Han Li dully said. Then he looked at Lady Yan, who looked as if she wanted to say something, and waved his hand, preventing her from talking. He continued coldly. However, if your brains aren't lacking, it should be clear that cultivators can't act against mortals as they desire. After all, your so-called land province's three great hegemons and the three great gangs of Jiayuan City still exist. They could have fallen to the schemes of unrighteous cultivators countless times. Perhaps even beautiful women like yourselves would have already become their playthings. Han Li's final sentence was completely blunt, turning the wives' complexions across from him to become scarlet and their eyes to show a bit of alarm. But this is merely young master's guess. It's not at all certain to be true. Lady Han was still somewhat unwilling, still attempting to persuade Han Li. So long as there is the possibility, this person will not perform actions that would bring destruction upon himself. Han Li fundamentally did not give Lady Yan's fantasies the slightest leeway, and he said this without a trace of politeness. Don't tell me that your venerable self plans to take our daughter's dowry with a sleight of hand and leave us with nothing. Lady Yan's complexion was somewhat unsightly. She said the word dowry with an especially heavy emphasis. Hearing her say this, although Han Li's expression did not change, his heart could not help but be somewhat depressed. The yin poison within me was originally given to me by your lord husband. Right now I won't trouble you even if I am cured. What is there to think about? Han Li thought somewhat hatefully. However, Han Li knew if he were to say these words at this moment, these wives would not take it well and certainly wouldn't give him the precious warm yang jade. As a result, Han Li gave in and muttered to himself. Then he raised his hand, cleared his throat, and said with a clear voice, I will give you two choices. Choose whichever you fancy. One is to have your Mo estate immediately pack your baggage and prepare to travel far from the land province. Find a place where the power of your enemy clans cannot reach you and live as a common wealthy household. You would live the rest of your lives peacefully and completely separate yourselves from the fights between Jianghu's factions. This entire journey will be safe, I completely guarantee it. Any forces that your enemies send to pursue you will unable to harm you. Han Li stopped there and looked at the change in the wives' expressions. Apart from a slight change from second wife Li, Lady Yan and third wife Liu were completely silent. It was clear what they thought of the proposal. Han Li didn't feel the need to look at fifth wife Wang, since it would be impossible to make out anything useful from her icy appearance. Han Li looked at this situation and inwardly sneered several times. Lady Yan and Lady Liu were rather ambitious people. It was impossible for them to want to give up the power of the fearsome Flood Dragon Association and live as rural village women. When he had raised this proposal, he already understood this clearly. And the other choice? Third wife Liu noticed that Han Li stopped and could not but question him. There is one other choice. Han Li left his chair and stood. He looked up to the room before slowly telling the wives the other choice. I could make the exception to act this once and cause the leaders of only one of the two gangs to disappear. After all, if the two hegemons were to simultaneously encounter misfortune, it would be far too easy for capable people to take note of this. The risk would increase significantly, so it isn't worth it for me to brave this strange danger. Furthermore, apart from these two options, I will not yield in the slightest. After Han Li said this, he hardened his face and spoke no more. He coldly waited for the wives' reply. After Lady Yan and the others heard Han Li's two choices, their faces had a concealed expression of pleasant surprise. However, after they looked at each other, they still hadn't immediately decided. Could your distinguished self please let us sisters talk this over for a moment? Afterwards, we will give young master a reply. After all, this is no small matter. We must greatly think this over, Lady Yan prudently said. Of course, I am not unreasonable, but at the latest, I require an answer by tomorrow morning. The rest of today should be enough for you to discuss this over. After Han Li said this, he no longer took notice of them and left in a relaxed manner. Han Li climbed down the stairs and did not return to his room. Instead, he gave the burly gate guards a baffled sight as he arrogantly left the Mo estate. After he determined there was no one following him, Han Li returned to the inn he where stayed at initially. As he entered the inn, Sun Ergu hurriedly welcomed him. If there is anything to say it in my room. Without waiting for Sun Ergu to start speaking, Han Li indifferently commanded him. Yes, esteemed young master. Sun Ergu respectfully followed behind Han Li. Entering the room, Han Li sat on the couch and stretched himself before saying indifferently, Seeing your urgent appearance, it seems you have something important to tell me. Young master, there has been an extraordinary event. I must report it to you, sir. Sun Ergu mysteriously replied, unintentionally advancing half a step. If there is something to say, then say it. Don't be nervous. Han Li looked at Sun Ergu with a tilted glance. He. This humble person isn't feigning mystery. A rather unexpected event has occurred. This humble person obtained the exact information to present to young master. Recently, a large number of immortals have gathered in Jia Yuan City to meet together in some sort of great immortal assembly. I've heard that so long as you can participate in this meeting, even common folk can immediately become an immortal as a member of an immortal clan. Sun Ergu said, his saliva splashing around. Immortals? Han Li was slightly surprised. That's right, there have been people that have seen them with their own eyes. Immortals that can soar the skies, harness the mist, and even expel lightning or shoot flames. Young master, what do you say? If one does not have any luck, how could they possibly see an immortal as they please? Sun Ergu asked somewhat enviously. Seeing his appearance, it seemed he had completely replaced himself with a person who couldn't wait to see an immortal. Han Li had already stopped listening at this point. What Sun Ergu called immortals were actually cultivators. However, how did a gangster find out about the meeting of cultivators? Han Li was somewhat shocked. How do you know of this? Do you know much about the person who gave you this information? Han Li asked with interest. This information is completely reliable. It is what my gang brothers have told me. However, because my gang leader is afraid of immortals, he ordered us to seal our lips. Only the upper division of the 4th level gang knows this information. I have also obtained similar information from a drunken noble. I imagine that young master, being such an expert, would be interested. As a result, I hastily rushed over and waited until young master had returned. Sun Ergu said, eager to take credit for his information. Oh, I will not forget your hard effort. However, first specifically explain how those in your gang evaded the notice of those immortals after learning this information. Han Li earnestly investigated in detail. This related to the reliability of the information. Therefore, Han Li didn't dare to be careless. I also heard that drunk noble said it was like this. Sun Ergu didn't dare to speak false words and honestly informed Han Li. Originally, the news from a small gang leader of the 4th level gang. Several days ago, he was conducting a large business transaction in the West City outskirts, but who would have thought the information was incorrect? The other party was far too greedy and had planned to kill everyone before escaping with the wind. In order to escape pursuit, he hid in a tree hole in the nearby woods. But unexpectedly, although the enemy had not found him, an incomparably large, monstrous eagle suddenly fell from the sky. That eagle's frightening appearance scared the gang member stiff. This man was quick-witted in the moment of crisis, and suddenly thought to use the widely spread Jianghu turtle breath art. He used it on himself to reduce his breath and heartbeat to the extreme, thereby entering a state of feigned death and evading the eagle's notice. Just as he was about to lose consciousness, he heard a dialogue from a young couple on the eagle's back. There were actually people on the eagle's back. However, because the eagle was so large and the man was panicked, he had not noticed the people on it earlier. Just like that, he faintly heard about the great immortal assembly. At that time, he also realized the young male-female couple were immortals, but his turtle breath art ran out of time, causing him to lose consciousness. By the time he had awakened, it was already the morning of the next day. The couple and the monstrous eagle had long departed without a trace. Thus, with no better option, he stamped his feet and beat his chest before returning crestfallen to the gang. The moment he returned, he was immediately yelled at, so he could not help but tell his superior of this. When his superior heard this, he didn't dare to cover it up and reported it to our gang leader, ape-armed Shen Zhongshan, who gave the command to seal our lips. After Han Li finished hearing Sun Ergu's story, although his face did not change, his heart stirred uncontrollably. A great many cultivators were meeting together. This was a golden opportunity that only occurred once every 100 years. If he could join, he would be able to come into contact with the world of cultivators, and he would no longer have to grope in the dark as he was doing now, arbitrarily trying to find the path of cultivation. Han Li strongly suppressed the excitement in his heart and thought for a moment. With a profoundly calm head, he asked, "Did that person hear the immortal couple say where they were holding the gathering of immortals?" He did not mention the time, but from the way he spoke, it appears that it's going to be not too long from now. As for the meeting place, it seems like it was not mentioned. Sun Ergu said as he scratched his head, somewhat embarrassed. Han Li frowned. Apparently, the information that Sun Ergu possessed was not 100% accurate. There were definitely some aspects that were overlooked. Han Li bowed his head and pondered for a while. Suddenly, he had an epiphany and thought of a brilliant idea. He cautiously gave Sun Ergu a once-over, then abruptly smiled and said, "Sun Ergu, I'm very pleased with the way you handle affairs recently, especially the major contribution you've made with the latest information. As a result, I am prepared to reward you heavily." When Sun Ergu heard this, he was so elated that his face brightened up subconsciously. Sun Ergu never would have thought that a few pieces of information would merit the appreciation of this esteemed young master and lead to a reward. It seemed that handling affairs for this person was truly refreshing. Although he didn't know why Han Li would reward him so handsomely, Han Li wouldn't give him a large amount of gold and silver treasure, would he? Sun Ergu couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. "Do you have any interest in becoming the commander of the 4th-level gang?" Han Li's question was so earth-shattering that Sun Ergu's surprised face changed so drastically, and he nearly jumped out of his skin. Young master must be joking and teasing this servant. This servant has little ability and character. How could I qualify to be a commander? Sun Ergu muttered sullenly. Why not? With me supporting you from behind, even a small group like 4th-level gang would be easy to obtain. Or are you willing to just be a minor gang leader and take care of the harbor for the rest of your life? Han Li said cajolingly as he laughed softly. When Sun Ergu heard this, many expressions crossed his face. There was surprise, fear, and mostly excitement. As a man who would not imagine himself being surrounded by beauties one day, having all the authority in his hands and being able to control someone's life or death. What a marvelous idea. Buried at the bottom of his heart, Sun Ergu's innermost ambition was lightly ignited by Han Li's few words. But Sun Ergu still had a few qualms, and thus did not immediately agree with Han Li. The martial arts of our commander and the 3 great protectors is certainly not weak. Can young master be certain that he can subdue them? Sun Ergu asked tentatively in a low voice. Subdue them? Haha, what's the use of that? Just kill them all, Han Li said coldly as he regarded them with little importance. Sun Ergu couldn't help but to shudder when he heard this. This young master's killing intent was truly too great. If he did not agree, Sun Ergu was afraid that he might be dealt with immediately. Since young master speaks highly of this servant's life is bound to young master. I will listen to and obey your every command. Under Han Li's coercion and persuasion, Sun Ergu was finally willing to take some risks. Good, this is how it should be. Han Li nodded his head in satisfaction. Give me your commander's most recent movements, Han Li asked willfully. There is one that is noteworthy. Recently, he has been going to the eastern city's most popular brothel, the Clear River Brothel, every afternoon. He has been entranced by the leading girl, Xiao Jinjai. However, the 3 great protectors would also accompany him, so I'm afraid it might be a bit hard to deal with. Why not wait for a few more days and find a better opportunity? Since Sun Ergu had already agreed with Han Li, he would immediately do everything he could for sake of his life and glory. No need, since we already know the time and place, taking their small lives will be very easy, Han Li mentioned causally. But once they die, you're afraid you won't have the capability to take over 4th-level gang, correct? Yes. Within the gang, this servant is only a minor leader. There are many other who have higher ranks and better qualifications than me, Sun Ergu said shamefully. Don't worry, if I said I'd make you the commander of the 4th-level gang, you'll definitely be the commander. I will temporarily dispatch Crooked Soul to watch over you. He can get rid of all those that rebel against you and be your personal guard for the time being," Han Li declared confidently. Afterwards, Han Li rushed to the room next door and knocked calmly 3 times. A short moment later, Crooked Soul appeared in front of them. "Keep this close to you and conceal it well. As long as you have this object on you, Crooked Soul will obey all your orders. He will get rid of your enemies and help you ascend to the position of commander." Han Li took out the soul-luring watch from his bosom. He caressed it softly for a while, then handed it over to Sun Ergu. Although the person holding soul-luring watch was not the master of Crooked Soul, he could still command Crooked Soul. This was another method of control on Crooked Soul that Dr. Mo taught Han Li. Furthermore, if the former owner dripped his blood essence onto the soul-luring watch, other people would not be able to tamper with it. Hence, Han Li was not afraid that Sun Ergu might have evil plans or other intentions. Sun Ergu had personally seen Crooked Soul's display of his mighty power, so he was especially surprised to receive the watch, increasing his courage drastically. "Many thanks to young master's great kindness. This servant will definitely repay this favor with my life." But Sun Ergu was very clever. He knew that despite being the commander of the 4th-level gang, he was actually just this young master's puppet. Thus, whenever there was an opportunity, he would fervently express his loyalty. "Head back and prepare first, then? Once that commander is dead, you should take advantage of the confusion and assume control of 4th-level gang. But you must remember this. Send me the fellow who saw the immortal couple. I want him unharmed as I have things to ask him. Did you get that?" Han Li's last sentences were very strict, clearly attaching great importance to this task. "Please be at ease, young master. This servant will definitely send him to you in one piece. I will absolutely not disappoint, young master." Sun Ergu immediately patted his chest and vowed with devotion written on his face. "As long as you understand, then that's good. Bring Crooked Soul along with you then. The next time you see me, you will already be the commander," Han Li told him without batting an eye. "This servant will retire now." Sun Ergu noted Han Li's notice to leave and tactfully retreated out of the house with great speed. Crooked Soul followed closely behind. The moment Sun Ergu left the house, Han Li stood up. Within the house, Han Li turned in a semicircle and suddenly let out a prolonged mellow whistle. Then, from the outside, the cloud-winged bird dived in and landed on Han Li's shoulder. Han Li extracted a bottle from his bosom and poured out the cloud-winged bird's favorite yellow chestnut pill, which he gently fed to the bird. Then he softly said, "Little fellow, catch up with the person who just left the house. If he leaves the city walls to escape, immediately return and tell me." When the cloud-winged bird finished listening to Han Li's words, it chirped intelligently and proceeded to fly out of the window, disappearing into the sky.